Chapter 293. Sangwon secretly breathed a sigh of relief. She went with the flow and said embarrassedly, If madam didn't mention it, I wouldn't have thought about it. Now that I think about it, my mind is empty. I can't remember anything except my own name. What should I do? What should I do? Don't be afraid. Hearing this, the madam suddenly sat in front of her bed. She couldn't help but hold her hand and comforted her softly. Don't worry, you will remember. We can be considered to be fated. You don't worry and stay here with me. You can stay as long as you want. How can I do that? I've caused trouble for madam. Silly girl, the madam said with a smile. Didn't I say? This could also be considered a type of fate. It means that we are fated. Don't think too much, your body is more important. Thank you, madam. Sangwon smiled and nodded at her gratefully. He was certain that he was the only one who was saved by this madam. Luya and the rest were most likely in a precarious situation. Thinking of this, her heart ached, and her face suddenly turned pale. I see that your complexion is not very good. Rest a little more, the madam said with a smile. She turned her head and stared at a servant girl. The servant girl hurried forward to help Sangwon lie down. I still don't know how to address madam, Sangwon asked with a smile. The madam thought for a moment and then smiled and said, You can call me Madam Zhao. This is Ding Mama. This servant girl will serve you closely in the future. She is called Yuanyang. If you need anything, just tell her. Thank you, Madam Zhao. Sangwon nodded and bowed to Madam Zhao. Have a good rest. When we reach the shore, I will invite a good doctor to take a look at you. Madam Zhao smiled gently and went out with Ding Mama. Young lady, come. Yuanyang went forward to help Sangwon lie down. She supported her with one hand and pulled the pillow with the other. Her skillful movements had a bit of the style and elegance of a master. At a glance, one could tell that she was not a servant girl of an ordinary family. Sangwon nodded. Before she could lie down, her stomach let out a series of gurgling sounds. Sangwon blushed and felt a little embarrassed. Yuanyang smiled gently and said, It's all the servant's fault for being careless and forgetting about this matter. Young miss has already been unconscious for a day and a night. I'm sure you must be hungry. This servant will ask someone to cook some porridge for young miss. One day and one night. Sangwon was shocked. She thought that this was the night of the accident. One day and one night was enough for a large ship to travel a very long distance. Sangwon's heart slowly cooled down. That's right, Yuanyang smiled and said. We saved Miss yesterday when it was almost dark. Miss is very lucky and is destined to have a benefactor to help her. At that time, it just so happened that our madam felt that the cabin was too stuffy, so she went to the deck to get some fresh air. She just happened to see Miss half floating and half sinking in the river, tightly holding a wooden board in her hands. Otherwise, when the sky turned dark, she really wouldn't be able to see anything. Yuanyang is grateful for Madam Zhao's life-saving grace. Sangwon smiled. No wonder madam said that this is fate with Miss. Yuanyang pursed her lips and smiled. This servant has never seen madam treat any miss so well. Young miss, you have really met with fate with our madam. Please wait a moment. This servant will ask someone to bring miss some food. Yuanyang suddenly realized that she seemed to have said too much, and stopped with a smile. She bowed and left. Sangwon smiled gently and leaned back before letting out a deep sigh. She didn't know how Luya and the others were doing. If something were to happen to them, how could he feel at ease? She couldn't help but put her palms together and softly chanted. She thought that perhaps in the eyes of others, she was already a dead person, right? Sangwon was at a loss for a moment. She didn't know how the magistrate would react if they knew that something had happened to her. There was also Shifengju. Thinking of him, Sangwon's heart suddenly ached. Not long after, Yuanyang came back in with a bowl of mouthwash in her hands. Behind her, there was a young maidservant holding a copper basin with a white towel draped over it. This servant will help Miss freshen up. Yuanyang indicated for the maidservant to put the basin to the side and smiled at Sangwon. Sangwon lowered her head and looked at the clothes she was wearing. She couldn't help but smile and say, Do you have clean clothes? Could. Before she could finish, Yuanyang hurriedly hit her forehead and said with a smile, This servant was careless and didn't even think of this. Miss, please wait a moment. This servant will bring you clothes. As she said this, she hurriedly opened the curtain and went out. Not long after, Yuanyang came in with a set of pink clothes. She gently put the clothes to the side and unfolded a yellow robe embroidered with white magnolia, and put it on Sangwon. She smiled and said, Miss, wear this. It's not good for you to walk around because of your injuries. Just lie down on the bed and rest after you eat something. Madam said that when we arrive at the pier, she will ask someone to buy a few good clothes for Mississippi Miss. Please bear with it. As long as she had clothes on her body, it was fine. Sangwon didn't mind much and only took the opportunity to ask, Where is this ship heading to? Yuanyang asked with a strange smile. Of course it's going back to the capital. Our madam is from the capital. This time she's going back to visit her parents. Miss, you're really lucky. Our madam hasn't gone back for many years. Who would have thought that she would meet you when she returned this year? Yuanyang kept on chattering at the side. Sangwon forced a smile and responded with a few words. She didn't ask too many questions. Since she pretended to have amnesia, asking too many questions would make people suspicious. The capital, fortunately, it's the capital. Isn't Shifengju in the capital? Thinking of him, Sangwon's hanging heart calmed down a little. She used a bowl of porridge and rinsed her mouth. Sangwon then lay down to rest again. Yuanyang slightly pushed the plum blossom pancake in the incense burner. Seeing the faint smoke curl up, she bowed and exhaled. On the other side, Madame Zhao and Ding Mama were talking about their inner thoughts. Madame Zhao's face was full of smiles. Her eyebrows were relaxed and her face was glowing. Perhaps it was because she was too worried in the past and her eyebrows were tightly knitted. At this moment, when Ding Mama looked at her, she suddenly felt gratified, as if her master had been reborn. Similar, really similar. Ding Mama, tell me, how can there be such a similar person in this world? Madame Zhao said to Ding Mama with a smile. That's right. Ding Mama also smiled inside. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, the old slave also wouldn't dare to believe that this Miss One is so similar to. Madam, this is really heaven's will. You're right, heaven's will. This is really heaven's will. My son can be saved, my son can be saved this time. Madame Zhao's eyes reddened, and she couldn't help but shed tears. She quickly raised her handkerchief to wipe them away. But madam, Ding Mama said worriedly, although that's the case, this Miss One isn't the same person as before. If the young duke doesn't recognize her. Humph. Hearing Ding Mama mention the past, Madame Zhao's face was full of disgust. She said hatefully, that lowly servant, she didn't even look at herself and dared to seduce my son. I don't regret sending her to death at all. This Miss One looks similar to her, but her temperament is much higher than that lowly servant's. I know my son, he will definitely like Miss One. Madam, you're right. How can that lowly servant compare to Miss One? This Miss One looks like a daughter from a good family. She makes people feel close to her. Ding Mama quickly said with a smile. That's right. I also liked her the moment I saw her. Madame Zhao beamed with joy and her heart was incomparably carefree. But her background is unknown. Do you want to send someone to investigate? Ding Mama frowned and suddenly asked. Madame Zhao thought for a while and shook her head. Let's not do it for now. Let's wait until she remembers. If she doesn't remember, then there's no need for this. With her status as Wu-wei Manor's madam and her son's outstanding appearance, why would a young lady like her not be willing? As for what kind of family she was from, Madame Zhao didn't really care. Why should she investigate? If she really found something wrong, wouldn't she be looking for trouble? As long as she could save her son, it didn't matter if she was from a poor commoner's family. It was better than that lowly servant by 1,000 times. Ding Mama had been by Madame Zhao's side for many years, and after thinking for a while, she understood Madame Zhao's meaning. She nodded her head and said, Yes. Tell Yuanyang to take good care of that young lady. Pass down the order that everyone on this ship must not neglect her. Madame Zhao raised her head and sighed. How many more days until we reach the capital? Tell the boatman to increase the speed. The medicine that could cure her son's heart was right in front of her, and Madame Zhao didn't want to wait any longer. Yes, madam. Ding Mama bowed and left to pass down the order. Sangwon was a young lady and her body was weak. She had suffered a huge fright on the ship, and then fell into the water. She had suffered a lot, and now that she was awake, the aftereffects flared up. Her body was extremely weak and her face was pale. She looked haggard and her body was weak. The time she was awake was very little, and the time she was unconscious was more than half. Luckily, Madame Zhao was wealthy and the attendants she brought along were all capable and meticulous people. When they arrived at the docks, they didn't care about the price. 7 to 8 days later, they arrived at Tongzhou Pier. Sangwon's complexion had improved and she could barely get up. In these few days, Madame Zhao would visit her twice a day to ask about her in detail, and was very concerned. It would be a lie to say that she did not feel grateful. However, the way Madame Zhao looked at her had a deep meaning that she could not understand. It made her heart beat like a drum for no reason, and she naturally had some vigilance towards Madame Zhao. Young Lady Wan, quickly drink this medicine. There's still a long time before the ship reaches the shore. We don't know when it will reach the Fu. Don't delay young lady from taking the medicine. Right now young lady's medicine can't be stopped so easily. Yuan Yang smiled as she brought over the bowl of medicine. Sangwon smiled at her, and took the bowl of medicine. She drank it one mouthful at a time. Yuan Yang hurriedly helped her rinse her mouth and helped her lie down. Young lady, please rest for a while. When the ship reaches the shore, this servant will come and ask young lady to get up and help you wash up. Madam has a lot of luggage to move and there's plenty of time. Chapter 294. Sangwon nodded with a smile, and continued to lie down. After a while, tiredness hit her, and her eyelids became heavier. Sangwon couldn't control herself and fell asleep. Yuan Yang and Ding Mama came in and gently called, Miss Wan a few times. Seeing that she didn't respond, they looked at Ding Mama. Ding Mama nodded and ordered, bring the sedan chair here. Be careful and don't wake her up. When she gets in the carriage, you have to serve her carefully. Yes, Mama, don't worry. Yuan Yang bowed and agreed. Unaware, Sangwon asked someone to bring her into the carriage. Yuan Yang also got in, while Madame Zhao and Ding Mama got in the other carriage. Ding Mama gave some orders and the two carriages left the dock and slowly drove away, leaving the people carrying the luggage far behind. The carriage traveled for more than 2 hours before it gradually turned into a beautiful mountain range. The red leaves on the mountain were like fire, fluttering like butterflies, under the brilliant autumn sun. It was as beautiful as the hundreds of flowers in the month of March. Lifting the curtain and looking outside, Madame Zhao only saw the bleakness of the mountain. She sighed softly and lowered the curtain again. After a while, the carriage stopped in front of a manor. Ding Mama got out of the carriage and quickly helped Madame Zhao down. Madame Zhao's body was slightly trembling. After walking a few steps, she suddenly stopped and subconsciously adjusted her clothes and hair. She said to Ding Mama, Mama, help me see if there's anything wrong with it. Madame Zhao's eyes were shining. She was both excited and nervous. Seeing this, Ding Mama couldn't help but feel sad. She quickly smiled and said, Madam, this is very good. Really, there's nothing wrong with it. Many years ago, Madame Zhao's husband, Wu Weiho, died in the line of duty, leaving her with only this one son. She poured all her efforts into this one son, hoping that he would become outstanding. Who knew that a lowly servant girl, who was originally a dancer, would ruin him? How could Madame Zhao tolerate this? Taking advantage of his absence, she ordered people to beat the dancer to death. She originally thought that this matter would be over after her son messed around with her for a while. Who knew that her son was truly moved and treated her as an enemy from then on? The more she wanted him to do something, the more he refused to do it. 3 years ago, he had moved to this West Mountain courtyard by himself. For 3 whole years, he had not taken a single step back to the Marquis mansion in the capital, nor had he seen her once. Every time she came, she was turned away at the door. She was not even allowed to step through the door of the villa. Hearing Nanny Ding's words, Madame Zhao breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. That's good, that's good. The master and servant knocked on the door. Few people usually came to this manor. Nanny Ding knocked on the door for a while before she heard footsteps coming. The door creaked open. An old servant in brown clothes blinked his eyes and hurriedly bowed. Madam. Madame Zhao nodded. Seeing the old servant's awkward expression, she smiled faintly. She had no intention of entering and only asked him, "Is the young Marquis here? Is he okay?" Seeing that she had no intention of entering the manor, the old servant was secretly relieved. He hurriedly replied respectfully, "The young Marquis is here. Madam, don't worry. The young Marquis is fine. We servants will serve him attentively and don't dare to neglect him." "It's good that he's fine." Madame Zhao sighed and said, "Go tell him that I brought him a gift. He will definitely like it when he sees it. If he doesn't want me to go in, then I won't go in. Tell him to come out and take a look. If he doesn't, then he will definitely regret it for the rest of his life. Go. Just tell him that." The old servant was somewhat puzzled, and unconsciously glanced at the two carriages not far away. He hurriedly nodded and said, "Yes, this old slave will go and report to the young Marquis." The old servant originally wanted to close the door, but after thinking about it, he gave up and left the door wide open. Madame Zhao tightened her handkerchief and said uneasily, "Nanny, do you think he will come out? If he doesn't come, then what should we do?" Nanny Ding hurriedly said, "Madam, don't worry. How could the young Marquis not come? If he doesn't come, then we'll think of another way." Madame Zhao nodded, but her expression was still uneasy. At this moment, the young Marquis Zhaoqi was watching the bright red and golden koi fish compete for food by the pond in the garden. His gaze was somewhat dazed, as if he was watching the fish, but also as if he was looking at nothing. His eyes couldn't find anything to focus on. For so many years, there was only one expression on his face, which was calm to the point of indifference. Even if he was smiling or angry, he still gave people the feeling that he was calm to the point of indifference. It was as if there was nothing in this world that could attract his attention. "Young Marquis." The old servant ran over and stood not far away from him, bowing in salute. Zhao Qi still had his hands behind his back as he stared at the fish that were constantly stirring up ripples in the pond due to the competition for food. He didn't move and turned a deaf ear. "Young Marquis, this old slave has something important to report." The old servant had to raise his voice. Only then did Zhao Qi slowly turn around and look at him. He faintly said, "Uncle Zhong, have you forgotten my rules? You can leave. If there's anything, wait until I get back." "Important matter? What important matter could he have here?" "Young Marquis, leave." Zhao Qi's voice was still calm, but Uncle Zhong knew that he was angry. "Yes." Uncle Zhong didn't dare to insist. He respectfully took a few steps back and waited with his hands down. After an unknown period of time, Zhao Qi turned around and was ready to leave. Only then did he realize that Uncle Zhong was still standing there. He frowned slightly and said as he walked, "What's the matter?" "Yes." Uncle Zhong hurriedly followed and said, "Young Marquis, Madame and Ding Mama are here." Zhao Qi's footsteps paused, but only for a moment. He still walked forward unhurriedly. He didn't look at Uncle Zhong from the corner of his eyes, nor did he open his mouth to ask. Uncle Zhong sighed in his heart and hurriedly continued, "Madam didn't enter the manor. She and Ding Mama have been waiting at the door. Madam said that if you don't want her to come in, she won't come in. She brought you a gift and said that you will definitely like it. She asked you to go out and take a look. Madam also said that if you don't go and take a look, you will regret it for the rest of your life." Zhao Qi finally stopped and looked at Uncle Zhong. "She said that if I don't go and take a look, I will regret it for the rest of my life?" There was an indescribable ridicule in his faint smile. "Yes, Madam said so." Uncle Zhong nodded. Zhao Qi laughed and said, "She's getting more and more tricks. Does she think that she can fool me like this? I'm not a 3-year-old child." "Young Marquis, why don't you go out and take a look? It's just a matter of a few steps. Aren't you curious?" Uncle Zhong hurriedly said. Zhao Qi thought for a moment and slowly nodded. "You're right. I'm really curious. I don't know what trick she's playing." With that, he walked in the direction of the door. Uncle Zhong secretly sighed. He moved his lips and wanted to persuade him, but in the end he didn't say anything and hurriedly followed. At the entrance of the manor, Madame Zhao and old maid Ding stood in the shadows under the eaves of the gatehouse and waited quietly. Although they had been waiting for a long time, the master and servant did not show a trace of anxiety. Madame Zhao was already very satisfied that they could make her wait instead of asking someone to come out, and reject her flatly. The sound of light footsteps could be heard. Madame Zhao turned around and saw a slender figure with a familiar handsome face. Her nose twitched and tears unconsciously welled up in her eyes. She stared blankly at the person who came, one hand tightly grasping Old Maid Ding's arm. Old Maid Ding was in pain, but she didn't say a word. You. Before Madame Zhao could finish her sentence, Zhao Qi impatiently interrupted her. Where's the gift? Didn't you say that if I don't take a look, I will regret it for the rest of my life? If you're joking, I won't argue with you. Goodbye. Zhao Qi said and turned to leave. Wait. Madame Zhao hurriedly blinked away the tears in her eyes and hurriedly said, It's in the carriage behind. You can go and take a look yourself. You'll know that I'm not joking with you when you see it. Zhao Qi faintly glanced at her, and went straight to the carriage. He stood by the carriage and stared at the curtain of the carriage. For some reason his heart throbbed inexplicably. Unconsciously, he gently raised his hand and gently pushed the curtain to the side to take a look inside. With just one look, Zhao Qi felt like he was hit hard. His feet stopped and his whole body completely froze. He saw a woman lying on the couch leaning against the back wall of the carriage. The woman was covered with a thin embroidered velvet blanket. Her glossy black hair was scattered on the apricot embroidered pillow. Her eyes were closed and her face was pale. But those eyebrows, that jade-like straight nose, those delicate lips, those cheeks, those entire facial features, it was clearly fair. Zhao Qi murmured and suddenly got into the carriage. He lifted the curtain and went in, scaring Yuanyang. Young Marquis. Kneeling in front of the couch, Yuanyang hurriedly saluted Zhao Qi. Zhao Qi did not even bother to look at her. He went forward and sat on the couch as he stared blankly at Sangwan. His infatuated gaze was filled with endless longing and tenderness, as well as disbelief and surprise after regaining what he had lost. Yuanyang bowed her head slightly, gently got up and silently retreated. Zhao Qi trembled and reached out to touch Sangwan's cheek, but the moment he almost touched her, he suddenly retracted his hand. He forced himself to turn his face away and not look at her. He raised his head and took a few deep breaths. He rubbed his temples and muttered, Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? It must be a dream. He suddenly laughed strangely and whispered, It's fine if it's a dream. If I can see her in my dream, I'm willing to never wake up. You're not dreaming. Zhao Qi looked up and found that Madame Zhao had also gotten into the carriage. Madame Zhao suppressed the great joy in her heart and said faintly, I went back to visit my parents and happened to save her in the river. She must have encountered a flood and suffered a lot. Look at her. Her body is still very weak. If we don't go to the capital as soon as possible, I'm afraid. Zhao Qi's heart tightened and he impatiently interrupted her. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go back to the capital. Madame Zhao was startled. Then her heart was filled with ecstasy. She quickly nodded and said, Good. We'll go back to the capital. We'll go back to the capital. After saying that, she hurriedly ordered the coachman to start driving. Seeing that Madame Zhao was reluctant to get out of the carriage, Ding Mama told Yuanyang to get into the carriage that Madame Zhao was in before she got into the latter one. Chapter 295. The sound of the car rumbled as it quickly drove away from the manor. Madame Zhao looked at her son with an uncontrollable smile on her lips. Zhao Qi didn't even look at her. His eyes were fixed on Sangwan's pale face on the bed, focused and worried. Why is her face so pale? Why hasn't she woken up yet? Zhao Qi asked. Madame Zhao was startled, then hurriedly replied, She was frightened and injured, so she has been sleeping most of the time these days. This is good. She won't have to endure more bumps on the road. Don't worry, her life is not in danger. She will definitely recover after a good rest. Zhao Qi didn't say anything else, just focused on Sangwan. When Sangwan woke up, she opened her eyes and found that she was in a different environment. This was a very spacious and bright room. The furnishings were very exquisite, just like the boudoir of a rich young lady. The furniture was inlaid with red lacquer, and all the curtains were light purple, embroidered with gold silk, light and soft, matched with the furnishings in the room, luxurious and elegant. Yuanyang. Yuanyang. Sangwon sat up from the bed, rubbing her somewhat dizzy head. Perhaps it was because she had been on the boat for a long time, but when she suddenly left, her head was very dizzy. The only one she was familiar with and could summon was Yuanyang. So in this unfamiliar environment, she naturally called out to her. "You're awake." What answered her was a gentle and pleasant male voice. Sangwon couldn't help but be startled, and subconsciously tightened the thin quilt on her body. Looking down, she saw that she was neatly dressed in a robe, and secretly sighed in relief. "You are." Sangwon was a little surprised and doubtful. "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you." The man came to her bed and looked at her with a gentle smile. His gentle smile made people couldn't help but let down their guard. Sangwon could see that this person really didn't mean any harm, but, "Young master. Why are you here?" Zhao Qi smiled. "My name is Zhao Qi, you can call me by my name. Your name is Yuanyang, right? Just now, the imperial physician has already taken a look at you and said that your body is fine. You will recover after resting for a while. You can rest well in our residence. If you have any needs, there is no harm in asking." "You're Madame Zhao's son?" Sangwon finally understood. Zhao Qi was slightly taken aback, but he nodded and said, "Yes. Young Master Zhao." Sangwon nodded at him. "You don't have to be so courteous. You haven't fully recovered yet. Don't tire yourself out." Zhao Qi's eyes lit up when he saw her greeting him, and his smile became even brighter. "I wonder where Yuanyang went. Young Master Zhao, is there anything else?" Sangwon saw that he had no intention of leaving, and she couldn't help but feel a little awkward. Madame Zhao's son appeared in her room. No matter how one looked at it, it was strange. But now that she was living under someone else's roof, Sangwon couldn't say anything. Zhao Qi came back to his senses and hurriedly said, "Yuanyang is outside. I'll call her over. Then I'll go out first and won't disturb your rest. By the way, are you hungry? What do you want to eat? From your accent, you seem to be from Jiangnan. I'll ask someone to make you Hangzhou cuisine, okay?" "Thank you, young Master Zhao. I don't have any preferences. You don't have to do this." Sangwon became more and more uneasy. "Then it's settled. I'll go first." Zhao Qi looked at her a few more times before leaving with a smile. "Miss, you're awake." After a while, Yuanyang came in with a smile. When she saw Sangwon leaning to get out of bed, she hurriedly stepped forward to help her. "Miss, be careful. You're weak. Why don't you lie down for a while?" "I want to get up and have a look," Sangwon insisted. The people in this residence were all strange. If someone rushed in without caring about anything, she didn't know how to deal with it. Sangwon gave Yuanyang a warm and gentle feeling. She had never insisted on her own opinions. Since she had said so, Yuanyang couldn't do anything about it, and could only comply with her. Sangwon held onto Yuanyang's arm and walked to the window. She pushed open the colorful glass lattice window and looked out. She saw a lush and verdant landscape with pavilions and pavilions. Below, there was a rock garden with golden chrysanthemums swaying in the wind. Not far away, there was a trickling stream that converged into a pool. Under the sunlight, the stream and the pool were like silver satin. "We've already reached the capital. This is Wu Wei Manor, right?" Sangwon asked softly. "Yes." Yuanyang nodded and smiled. "Old Marquis has passed away long ago. Now there's only Madam and young Marquis in the residence. The one who came in to see you was our young Marquis." After Yuanyang finished, she secretly looked at Sangwon's expression. Sangwon turned a deaf ear to it. She didn't even make a sound of "oh." It was obvious that she had no interest in young Marquis. Instead, she pointed to the northwest direction with interest and asked with a smile, "I see that there's a golden luster over there. Are those osmanthus flowers?" Yuanyang could only nod her head and smile. "Yes, that's the osmanthus forest. There are 10 over osmanthus trees planted there. Our capital is different from the south. At this time, the osmanthus flowers in the south have already bloomed. Here they are blooming nicely. Does young lady want to go over and take a look?" "And these few days I've been feeling drowsy. I was just thinking of going out for a walk." Sangwon smiled. She stared blankly at the golden luster of the osmanthus trees and her heart was at a loss. She recalled that before the 15th day of the 8th lunar month in Qingzhou, Shi Fengju had accompanied her to pick osmanthus flowers to put in a vase. She would occasionally mention that she liked the fragrance. The next day he got an osmanthus-scented Western perfume from somewhere, and gave it to her. He even said that he would get someone to pick osmanthus flowers to make a perfume pouch for her. He was really, really good to her, so good that she almost didn't want to think about it, but at this moment, every bit of him uncontrollably appeared in her mind. She then knew that he had already existed so deeply in her heart. It was so deep that she didn't need to deliberately think about it, and it would naturally reveal itself. Fengju, is he still in the capital now? Does he know that she is currently in Wuwei Manor, thinking about him and thinking about him? Young miss, do you still want to go? Yuanyang saw her staring blankly at the other side and asked softly. Let's go. Sangwon regained her senses and nodded her head. The two went downstairs. Yuanyang supported her as they slowly walked towards the osmanthus forest. As they walked, she introduced the scenery of the garden to her. Sangwon wasn't paying attention, but she still listened attentively, hoping to find a way out. Her intuition told her that old Mistress Zhao wouldn't let her leave so easily. Otherwise, she wouldn't have not said anything about it for so long. The most she talked about was, wait till we return to the capital, and so on. As for her memory loss, she never mentioned anything about treating her. And recently, the young marquis named Zhao Qi had appeared in her room for no reason. Sangwon wasn't stupid, and although she didn't dare to guess, she knew that it wasn't anything good. As they gradually got closer, the fragrance of the osmanthus flowers was strong. It came with the wind and lingered around her body, refreshing her mind. This osmanthus flower doesn't look very eye-catching, but the fragrance is very nice. If young miss likes it, then this servant will get someone to pick a few and put them in a vase, okay? Yuanyang smiled. Sangwon shook her head and said with a smile, there's no need. How can the flowers and plants in old mistress's garden be so easily spoiled? Yuanyang hurriedly smiled and said, young miss doesn't need to be so careful. Old mistress has already instructed the housekeeper to pass down the message that no one in this house is allowed to disobey young Mississippi. Young miss can do whatever you want. No one is allowed to say a word of no, and no one is allowed to make things difficult for you. Otherwise, you will be punished according to the family rules. After a pause, she continued, our old mistress really treats young miss well. Sangwon saw that Yuanyang had been probing Sangwon many times in the past few days. If Sangwon did not respond, Sangwon knew that Yuanyang would eventually reveal the truth. Thus, Sangwon smiled at Yuanyang with some doubt. I'm just wondering why old mistress treats me so well even though we've only met by chance. Yuanyang smiled and said, this is young miss good fortune. Our old mistress is a straightforward person. Her likes and dislikes are written all over her face. She really likes young miss. Young miss, please accept this good fortune. Hee, I'm afraid that in the future, you will have even greater good fortune. Sangwon's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. She looked at Yuanyang with an even more doubtful gaze and said tentatively, but I can't remember anything. I'm afraid that my family will be worried. Although I can't remember, I still have some worries in my heart. When Yuanyang heard this, she wanted to say something but hesitated. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't dare to say it. Sangwon's heart sank, but she didn't show it on her face. She only said anxiously, Yuanyang, do you know something? Quickly tell me. My heart feels uneasy for no reason. This servant. Yuanyang was in a difficult position. Sangwon said, it's fine if you don't say it. I'll go ask old Mistress Zhao. If there is something, I'm sure old mistress won't hide it from me. Young miss. Yuanyang hurriedly pulled her inside. Young miss, this servant said that young miss must hold on. Don't be sad. Your body is still very weak. Seeing Sangwon nod, Yuanyang then continued. Young miss, what you said is right. Our old mistress has already sent people to find out about this matter. That day when young miss was on the ferry with your parents, young miss's parents had already died in the river. In this world, young miss no longer has any relatives. Sangwon's face turned pale as she stared blankly at Yuanyang. Yuanyang couldn't bear it and sighed as she told Sangwon the details of the matter. Sangwon remained silent, but her heart was secretly shocked. Never in her wildest dreams did she think that old Mistress Zhao would come up with such a big lie to deceive her. Yuanyang spoke so skillfully and flawlessly. It was obvious that old Mistress Zhao had already planned for this matter. This really was. Sangwon's heart suddenly felt cold and her hair stood on end. Her knees went soft and she fell to the ground. "Young miss." Yuanyang hurriedly used her strength to help her up and said gently, "Young miss, don't be impatient. Since things have come to this, young miss should be able to accept it. Don't worry, old mistress and young miss are fated. She won't ignore this matter. Old mistress has already ordered for young miss's parents to be buried. This place is very far from young miss's hometown, Huayan. It's already late autumn. How can young miss's body withstand such a long journey? It's better for young miss to rest here and recover before making any plans. When the weather improves next year and young miss has recovered, old mistress will definitely send someone to send young miss back to show her filial piety." Chapter 296. In other words, she wouldn't be able to leave the household in the near future? Sangwon felt as if her insides were boiling. She didn't know what expression she should make, and could only nod her head blankly. Yuanyang said guiltily, "It's all this servant's fault. This servant shouldn't have mentioned this matter, and made Miss sad. Miss, please don't be like this, my condolences. Otherwise, your parents won't be at ease even if they see you like this." "Parents?" Sangwon looked up at the sky blankly. That's right, her parents wouldn't be at ease seeing her like this, right? How did she end up in such a situation where she couldn't advance or retreat? This old Mistress Zhao, what exactly is she trying to do? "Fengji, where is he?" "Miss Wan." A clear and surprised male voice came from behind her. Sangwon turned her head and saw Zhaoqi walking over with a smile. He asked with concern, "Miss Wan, why aren't you resting in your room? Have you recovered?" Sangwon looked at him and lowered her eyes without answering. Yuanyang hurriedly said, replying to young Marquis, "Miss Wan saw the osmanthus flowers blooming upstairs, and wanted to come over to admire them. This servant." Zhaoqi frowned and said, "Miss Wan's complexion is so bad. Don't you know how to get a palanquin? How are you going to let her walk? The osmanthus flowers aren't anything rare. Can't you get someone to bring her back to her room?" Yuanyang knew that the young Marquis's temperament had always been extreme, so she didn't dare to answer and lowered her head without saying a word. Sangwon said, "Young Marquis, please don't blame Yuanyang. I was the one who insisted on coming. I've been bored for the past few days, and wanted to come out for a walk." Good. Zhaoqi's face was full of smiles when he heard her say so. His tone subconsciously became gentler and he said carefully, "The sun doesn't have much warmth in this season, and the forest is gloomy. Don't catch a cold. If you still feel bored, I'll bring you to another part of the garden." Sangwon didn't say a word. Zhaoqi couldn't help but be elated when he saw that. He glared at Yuanyang and said unhappily, "Go back and get a cloak for Miss Wan, and have someone prepare some tea and pastries." Yuanyang didn't dare to ask where she was going to look for him with the cloak, tea, and pastries. She just answered with a yes, and went to bend her knees, not daring to stay for even a moment. "Miss Wan, let's go." Zhaoqi smiled and pointed to the front. "I remember there is a large field of autumn hibiscus and 5-colored chrysanthemums. Let's go take a look." Sangwon nodded and followed. Zhaoqi saw that her eyebrows were beautiful, her skin was as white as porcelain, her facial features were small and delicate, her expression was tranquil, and her temperament was gentle. Because she had not recovered from a serious illness, her movements were rather weak. Her willow yellow robe embroidered with white magnolia made her look even more elegant. She was so delicate and soft that one could not help but want to protect her. For a moment, Zhaoqi was a little dazed. This was the person he had been thinking about for so many years. Never in his dreams did he think that he would see her again one day. He never thought that she would live in front of him with flesh and blood. His heart was unbelievably soft. He stubbornly believed that she was the one he was thinking of. This was God's will, God's compensation to him. This time, no one could stop him. "Young Marquis." His gaze was so focused that Sangwon could not bear it, and looked at him unnaturally. Zhao Qi was startled back to reality by her gaze. He coughed unnaturally and went forward to raise his hand. "Miss Wan, it's over there. Come. Be careful where you step. Young Marquis, you are too polite." Sangwon nodded and quietly took 2 steps back to distance herself from him. Zhao Qi was a little disappointed. He smiled and said, "You are Wan Yang, right? I will also call you Wan Yang in the future. Young Marquis makes me uncomfortable. You can just call me Zhao Qi. Otherwise, you can call me Jinan." "Wan Yang doesn't dare," Sangwon said. "Young Marquis has a noble status. Wan Yang doesn't dare to be rude." "If I say it's okay, then it's okay," Zhao Qi said. "Wan Yang, I don't care about this noble status. Just call me Jinan. As long as I am here, you don't have to worry about anything. I will protect you." His words were getting more and more ridiculous. Sangwon was stunned and looked at Zhao Qi with a puzzled expression. Zhao Qi also noticed it and felt deeply regretful. He knew that he was too anxious and scared her. He forced a smile and said softly, "Wan Yang, don't think too much. I just want to protect you. I promise that you will be absolutely safe in this mansion. Rest assured and take care of yourself." "Thank you, young Marquis." Sangwon smiled and nodded. Zhao Qi saw that she insisted on calling him that, and smiled helplessly. He could only let her be. "Young Marquis and Madam are both good people. I don't know where Wan Yang's good fortune came from. To be treated so well by young Marquis and Madam," Sangwon suddenly said softly as they walked. Zhao Qi's body stiffened and he smiled faintly. "Wan Yang has a pure heart. No one can bear to not treat her well." Sangwon couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh when she heard this. She said, "Young Marquis and I have only met today, right? How can young Marquis be so sure that I have a pure heart?" When Zhao Qi saw her smile, her brows relaxed and her face blossomed like flowers in spring. For a moment, his mind was shaken and his mood improved a lot. He laughed and said, "I knew it. When I say Wan Yang, you're the best, you're the best." While speaking, they turned around a rock garden, and in front of them was a vast sea of flowers. The flowers were swaying and blooming with different colors of autumn hibiscus. The flowers were as big as the mouth of a bowl, with thousands of layers of petals. The flowers were full and beautiful, swaying under the autumn sun. A little further away, on the slightly undulating hills, there were countless chrysanthemums blooming. There were drooping lotus petals and pea-green palace powder. The beautiful purple and red swept away the bleak and austere aura of autumn. Sangwon hadn't seen such a bright color for a long time. Her eyes lit up and her expression unconsciously became gentle. However, looking at the sea of flowers in front of her, she couldn't help but think of the new year. Shifengju had found many tender and beautiful roses for her, and spread them around the entire courtyard. The room and the warm room were filled with the intoxicating fragrance of the flowers. She was really moved at that time. At that time, she was deeply in love with him and was so happy. "What are you doing?" Seeing Zhao Qi suddenly come over, Sangwon was startled and took a step back with her eyes wide open. Zhao Qi didn't blame her for being surprised at all. He quickly smiled and said, "A gust of wind blew a petal, and it fell on her hair. Don't move, I'll help you remove it." He carefully came over and his fingertips brushed through her hair. The soft, smooth, silky touch made him a little infatuated. He really wanted to take the weak woman in front of him into his arms and cherish her, but he was afraid of startling her, so he restrained himself. "Look." He spread out his fingers, and there was indeed a purple-red petal on the tip of his index finger. The wind blew gently, and the petal fell silently from his fingertips. "Wan Yang is so beautiful. The flowers in this garden can be considered rare and famous, but they can't even compare to Wan Yang's charm." Zhao Qi looked at her and sighed softly. He casually broke off a pink thousand-layered double-petal hibiscus and handed it to Sangwon. "Wan Yang, this is for you." Sangwon was suddenly embarrassed. She didn't know whether to accept it or not. After thinking about it, she finally nodded and thanked him and took it. Seeing that she liked it, Zhao Qi was overjoyed and hurriedly said, "Wan Yang, do you like it? I'll pick some more for you." "No need." Sangwon refused. Playing with the hibiscus flower in her hand, She forced a smile and said, "Little Marquis really knows how to please girls. With such a character like Little Marquis, you must be the object of admiration of countless girls in the capital." Hearing her words, Zhao suddenly became anxious and hurriedly said, "I haven't been back to the capital for several years. I live alone in the West Mountain courtyard. Pleasing girls has nothing to do with me. I only want to be good to Wan Yang." Sangwon was a little dumbfounded. She just wanted to test him and find out what was going on, but she didn't expect this person to speak so carelessly. Sangwon just pretended that she didn't hear anything and walked forward with her head down. She didn't dare to test him anymore. Seeing that she didn't respond, Zhao was secretly disappointed. Thinking that she didn't get angry and refuse, his spirit was lifted. He hurriedly called out, "Wan Yang," and quickly followed. "Wan Yang, are you tired? Let's go to the pavilion in front to rest." Zhao stepped forward and said gently. Sangwon's body hadn't recovered yet. After walking for such a long distance, she was already panting and her legs were weak. Hearing this, she nodded and walked towards the pavilion in the middle of the sea of flowers. It just so happened that Yuan Yang brought a cloak, tea and pastries over. She hurriedly went forward and spread it out in the pavilion. Sangwon was about to sit down when Zhao hurriedly took the cloak and folded it a few times and put it on the stone bench. Only then did he let Sangwon sit down. He turned to Yuan Yang and reprimanded, "You servant is becoming more and more unruly. Why didn't you even bring the brocade cushion? Can you sit in such a cold place? Wan Yang is still sick. Don't you know? This servant knows her wrongs. Young Marquis, please forgive her." Yuan Yang didn't dare to argue. She lowered her head and honestly admitted her wrongs. "Next time be smarter," Zhao coldly said. "If you don't know how to serve, then go back to where you came from. I don't believe that I can't find someone in this house who knows how to serve." Yuan Yang's head hung even lower. She didn't even dare to say the word "forgive me." "Young Marquis, don't blame Yuan Yang. She didn't know that we would come here." Sangwon could only say. When Zhao heard her say "we," it was naturally her and him. He was happy and the expression on his face softened. Since Wan Yang said so, then let her go. Drink a mouthful of hot tea to quench your thirst. Zhao personally poured a cup of tea for her. He sniffed and said, "This is Biluakun tea. I don't know if it suits Wan Yang's taste. If Wan Yang doesn't like it, then we can ask someone to change it." Sangwon took a sip of the tea and said, "Young Marquis, you don't have to worry. I don't have that many rules." Zhao sighed softly. Wan Yang's temperament is gentle and her temperament is also good. Sangwon lowered her head and continued to drink the tea. Zhao didn't like it when the servants came close. He gave them a look and stopped them. He and Sangwon were admiring the flowers in the pavilion and talking. Most of the time, he was the one talking while Sangwon listened. His eyes almost never left Sangwon. The more he looked, the more affectionate his eyes became. Sangwon dodged left and right. It was very difficult. Not long after, she said that she was tired and wanted to go back to rest. Chapter 297. Zhao was a little annoyed and hurriedly said, "It's all my fault. I was too happy and forgot that Wan Yang's body hasn't recovered yet. Go back and have a good rest. I'll ask someone to send you dinner. Tomorrow I'll ask a good doctor to take a look." Seeing that Sangwon was about to get up, Zhao quickly stopped her and said, "It's not close to Chuilu from here. Ask someone to bring a sedan chair." Before Sangwon could answer, Zhao had already sent someone to do it. Sangwon could only lower her eyes and acquiesce. She thought that they would part here. But who knew that Zhao would send her all the way back to Chuilu? After giving Yuan Yang some advice, he reluctantly left. Sangwon lay on the bed and secretly let out a sigh of relief. This young marquis was too strange, making it hard for people to breathe. When she woke up in the afternoon, it was already early evening. The room was brightly lit with candles. Under the candlelight, a charming and elegant face looked at Sangwon with a smile. It was Madame Zhao sitting by her bed. "Madam." Sangwon came back to her senses and hurriedly sat up. "Hurry and rest well." Madame Zhao hurriedly held her down and softly said with a smile, "Your body hasn't recovered yet. Don't be so particular. Madam is too kind. Sangwon smiled politely. She still sat up and leaned against the bed. She said embarrassedly, Madam, why are you here? Wan Yang has been rude. You're too polite. Madame Zhao smiled and asked for a while. She then smiled and said, You met Chi'er in the courtyard today? Sangwon's heart tightened and she hurriedly said, Yes, I accidentally met the young Marquis and talked for a while. Wan Yang. It's nothing, it's nothing. Madame Zhao saw her anxious and quickly said with a smile, It seems that you and Chi'er get along quite well. This is a good thing. It also saves you from being bored. Chi usually doesn't go out of the house. It's rare to have someone to talk to him. I'm also happy. Sangwon opened her eyes and blinked. She glanced at Madame Zhao without saying anything. Madame Zhao unconsciously held her hand and softly said, Wan Yang, you're a good girl. My family has never had any prejudice about social status. What do you think of Chi? If you become my daughter-in-law, I can't ask for anything more. Sangwon's face turned pale. She didn't know how to answer. When Madame Zhao saw her like this, she felt some regret in her heart. She shouldn't have brought up this matter so quickly, but she really didn't want to wait any longer. She had already waited for far too long. She was too afraid that things would change if she delayed. Zhao Qi was already 26 years old. Which young master at his age didn't have a large number of wives and concubines? His children might already be in school, but he didn't have a single woman by his side. Along the way, Sangwon's nature was gentle, cultured and refined, and she was the easiest person to talk to. Now that Yuan Yang had told her that she was an orphan and had no home to return to, other than the valiant martial manor, she had nowhere else to go. With her own son's character and looks, she would not lose out in this marriage. Madame Zhao pondered and unconsciously opened her mouth. Madam, you're not joking, right? Sangwon secretly complained and said, What kind of status does Madame and young Marquis have? What kind of status does Wan Yang have? It's not an exaggeration to say that it's like the difference between clouds and mud. Young Marquis's wife will naturally be a lady from a prestigious family. Wan Yang doesn't dare to comply. You're really a good girl who knows when to advance and when to retreat. Madame Zhao sighed. Exactly, I like you even more. As long as you nod your head, the position of the official wife will be yours. That Chi'er of mine, I can see that he especially cares about you. He will definitely not let you down. Sangwon still shook her head. Madam, you're too kind. Wan Yang really isn't worthy of young Marquis. These few days, Wan Yang has disturbed Madam and her heart is really uneasy. All right. Sangwon had just revealed a trace of intention to leave when Madame Zhao hurriedly interrupted with a smile. Even if you don't want to, it's fine. I won't force you. Your body is so weak now and you have no relatives or support in the capital. If you leave, where will you go? Just be at ease and stay here. People like us are the most law-abiding. We definitely won't do things that force people. Don't worry. Sangwon was secretly disappointed. Her guess was right. Madame Zhao was determined not to let her leave. What she didn't understand was that with Zhao Qi's status, character, and appearance, and half a day of getting along with him, she could see that he was a learned person. His temperament was also not strange. Why was Madame Zhao so determined to have her? Madame's words make me feel ashamed. Sangwon smiled and could only agree. Don't say that. I really like you and pity you. Madame Zhao said in her heart. If you really feel ashamed, then that's good. If you really feel ashamed, then you can't refuse my words. Many thanks for Madame's kindness. Sangwon was grateful. Madame Zhao nodded and said with a smile, Then get up and eat. I won't disturb you. By the way, I didn't mention this matter to Chi'er. You don't need to be embarrassed in front of him. It's rare for Chi'er to have a good friend. Wan Yang, if he wants to talk to you for my sake, accompany him and chat a bit. Madame Zhao looked at her with some nervousness. Sangwon's heart was slightly cold. If Madame Zhao really saw her as a good woman, she wouldn't say such words to her. If he came to talk to her, then she would accompany him. In her eyes she, Sangwon, was nothing more than this. Madam, don't worry. The young Marquis is gentle and polite. Like Madam, He treats Wan Yang very well. Wan Yang is not someone who doesn't know what's good for her. Sang-won responded with a smile. In her heart, she was more and more determined to find a chance to escape. Yes, you're absolutely right. When Madame Zhao heard her praise her son, her heart was filled with joy. She smiled until her eyebrows relaxed and her eyes brightened. After instructing Sang-won to have a good rest, she got up and left. Ding Mama, am I too impatient? Downstairs, Madame Zhao looked back and sighed softly. Ding Mama pulled back her sleeves and replied, Madam, you're the most pitiful parent in the world. You're too worried about the young Marquis. Madam, people's hearts aren't made of iron. The young Marquis has such a good appearance, and you saw how he treated Miss Wan in the garden today. Which girl wouldn't be moved? You should just let him get along with Miss Wan. Maybe in the future, when you chase her away, she won't be willing to leave. You're right. I'm a bit confused. Madame Zhao smiled and sighed. When Madame Zhao left, Sang-won didn't have time to sort out her messy thoughts. Yuan Yang came in with a smile and said, Miss, this servant will help you change your clothes. The young Marquis will come to see Miss in a while. Sang-won suddenly had a headache and said, At this time, why would the young Marquis come? She saw that Yuan Yang's expression was a bit sluggish, as if she had said something wrong. She coughed and said with a smile, I mean, if I still bother the young Marquis at this time, I'll feel bad. Yuan Yang suddenly understood, and went forward to help her change her clothes. She said with a smile, The young Marquis was worried about Miss and personally asked people to bring food over. Miss, you're really lucky. The young Marquis personally asked the kitchen to prepare this dinner. Sang-won forced a smile, but her heart became more and more uneasy. Wan Yang, can I come in? Just as she finished tidying up, she heard Zhao Qi's gentle voice from the door. Sang-won looked at Yuan Yang. Yuan Yang bent her knees and hurried to open the door. She said with a smile, Young Marquis, Miss just got up. Please come in. Zhao Qi looked at her and walked in, followed by 6 maidservants and 2 female servants who were holding food boxes. Wan Yang, I've brought you dinner. I specially asked people to make Hangzhou dishes. I don't know if you like it. When Zhao Qi saw her, his tone and eyes suddenly became gentle, and the smile on his lips could make people drown. The 2 maidservants excused themselves and moved the table from the side to the center. They opened the food boxes in the hands of the 6 maidservants one by one and placed about 13 or 14 dishes of steaming hot delicacies that had just come out of the pot on the table. They bowed and retreated. Wan Yang, eat it while it's hot. The doctor said that you need to eat something light to replenish your vitality. I specially asked people to stew a pot of old ginseng, wolfberry and black chicken soup. Come, I'll get it for you. Zhao Qi opened the pot and poured the soup himself. How could Sang-won let him serve her? She hurried forward and said, Young Marquis, put it down. I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. It's fine. Zhao Qi didn't mind at all. Instead, he felt that taking care of her was natural. He avoided her hands and scooped the soup, then gently put it in front of her. Drink it while it's hot. You still need to drink medicine later. Sang-won saw his earnest eyes looking at her. She forced a smile and picked up the spoon. Zhao Qi had been gently watching her from the side. He didn't even blink and didn't want to look away. The skills of the Marquis' mansion's cooks were not bad. The soup was rich and delicious. The black chicken inside almost melted in the mouth. The essence was integrated into the soup, and the fragrance of the soup assailed her nose. But when it reached her mouth, Sang-won couldn't taste anything. She absent-mindedly drank more than half of the bowl in a while. Zhao Qi was happy to see that she liked it. He took her bowl and said with a gentle smile, Eat some rice and dishes. There's still soup in the kitchen. I'll ask someone to send another bowl over before going to bed. If you like it, I'll ask the kitchen to make more for you tomorrow. Wan Yang, you don't look well. You suffered a lot before, didn't you? He glanced at the dishes on the table and said with a smile, Shrimp with longjing, honey-flavored fire square, mandarin fish with crab sauce, fairy duck, running tiger vegetarian ham, and straw duck. Which one do you like? I'll bring it over for you. Sang-won really didn't have any appetite in front of him, but she didn't want to reject his good intentions. She casually said, This shrimp looks a bit bland. Zhao Qi hurriedly put the shrimp in front of her. The shrimp is good, the shrimp is good. Try it. Sangwon picked up the chopsticks and tasted a few mouthfuls. She saw Zhao Qi sitting at the side and looking at her. She really couldn't bear it and said, "Young Marquis, have you eaten? If you haven't then, Wan Yang, if you don't mind, I'll eat with you. It's boring to eat alone. I'll accompany you in the future, okay?" Zhao Qi was even more happy when he saw her open her mouth. He smiled and said, there was a clean bowl and chopsticks next to him. He had already prepared it. Sangwon opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. She clearly didn't mean that. She wanted to say that if he hadn't eaten, then he should go back first. He didn't need to accompany her here. Chapter 298. Wan Yang, you're so skinny. It hurts my heart to see you like this. Eat more. He didn't eat much himself, but from time to time, he would use the serving chopsticks to take care of her. His smile was warm and clean, making Sangwon unable to refuse. After the meal, Zhao Qi refused to leave and stayed with her for a while. When he saw her take the medicine, and hinted that she wanted to take a bath and rest, he left reluctantly. At night, lying on the unfamiliar soft bed, Sangwon looked at the faint moonlight coming through the carpet in front of the bed. The corners of her eyes gradually moistened, and her nose turned sour. Unknowingly, tears seeped out of the corners of her eyes. As soon as she closed her eyes, a big drop of crystal tears flowed from the corner of her eyes and rolled onto the red embroidered pillow. Never before had her heart been filled with indescribable hesitation and panic like this. The only thing that came into her mind was her husband, Shi Fengjiu. She always thought that she only had obligations and duties to him without any affection or attachment. Only now did she know that he had been so deeply imprinted in her heart that she couldn't leave him at all. When she thought about how she was alone with an uncertain future, and how she didn't know where he was and what he was doing, she felt so uncomfortable that she almost suffocated and went crazy. Would he think that she was dead? If he thought that she was dead, she knew that he would be sad, but there was nothing he could do about it. What about after that? Would he marry another woman as his wife? That person would most likely be Gu Fangzi. She hadn't left him any children, so how could the Shi family not have any descendants? He was a very responsible person for his family, and would never do that. From then on, even if he remembered her, it would only be because of the string of paper money that came to his mind during the Qingming festival. He would still live his own life, just like in his previous life. Without her, he would still live a good life. No, it can't be like this. Absolutely not. Sangwon shook her head desperately, bit her lip, and painfully closed her eyes to let the tears flow. Just thinking about it caused her to be heartbroken. The current her was absolutely unable to accept such a cruel reality. He said that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. He said that he would love and protect her for the rest of his life. However, she was the one who had disappeared. She was the one who disappeared from his life. She had traveled thousands of miles and was penniless. She didn't even have any keepsake. Not to mention that she didn't even have her freedom now. To return to his side was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for her. Fengjiu, where exactly are you? Do you know that I'm not dead? I'm not dead. Fengjiu, come and save me. I can't live without you. Fengjiu. Sangwon pleaded silently. She had never missed his embrace as much as she did at this moment. She missed every moment by his side. As long as she could return to his side, she was willing to pay any price. Her mind was filled with his kindness, his gentleness and thoughtfulness. That faint resentment and annoyance had long since disappeared without a trace. It turned out that unknowingly, he had long become a person she could never forget in her life. She only hated that she understood her heart too late. After a night of tossing and turning, Sangwon looked somewhat haggard the next day. Did Miss not sleep well last night? Are you feeling unwell anywhere? Yuanyang suddenly became nervous and hurriedly said, if Miss is feeling unwell, please tell this servant so that this servant can report to old mistress and young Marquis. If there's anything wrong with Miss, this servant can't bear the responsibility. I'm fine. Sangwon shook her head reluctantly and smiled. Maybe it's because I went out for a long time yesterday that I'm tired. No worries, I'll just rest today. Yuanyang was relieved and hurriedly said with a smile, That's good, that's good. Young Marquis has already instructed that if Miss feels stuffy in the house and wants to go out for a breather, you can take the sedan. Miss, let this servant help Miss freshen up. Sangwon nodded. After freshening up, she came to the window and gently pushed it open. A light and elegant osmanthus fragrance wafted out. Sangwon was startled and subconsciously looked downstairs. She saw that there were almost 30 to 40 osmanthus bonsai downstairs. Each one of the flower pots was half a person's height, and the golden osmanthus trees were also about a person's height. They were spread out below the Chui Lu, and the ground was covered in gold. In just one night, how did it become like this? Sangwon was momentarily stunned. Yuanyang saw her startled expression and went forward with a pleased smile. Miss doesn't know, right? Yesterday, young Marquis ordered us to buy them at a high price from the capital. He said that Miss likes them and they were all placed here last night, so that Miss can open the window and smell the osmanthus fragrance. This osmanthus is commonly seen in Jiangnan, but it's also very rare in the capital. This servant heard that for these osmanthus flowers, the house's housekeepers had to go to all the gardeners in the capital to get them. Sangwon was even more upset. She forced herself to smile at Yuanyang and didn't say anything. Yuanyang saw her indifferent expression and felt pity and puzzlement. Young Marquis treated her like this and almost held her in his palm. Any girl would be moved, right? This Miss One was very interesting, and the worry between her eyebrows was even more obvious. Yuanyang tactfully stopped talking and poured a cup of tea for her. She smiled and said, This servant will go and urge you to eat breakfast. Miss must be hungry. Sangwon was afraid that she had received another order from Zhao Qi and would place a large table like last night. She hurriedly said, I don't have much of an appetite today. Ask the kitchen for a bowl of porridge and a plate of spicy pickled vegetables. Yuanyang complied and went to give the order. Not long after, the porridge arrived. It looked like porridge, but when it entered her mouth, there was a fragrant and fresh taste of chicken. Yuanyang saw her pause and hurriedly said with a smile, This porridge is made from the kitchen's broth. It's very light and it's good for Miss Body to eat more. Sangwon didn't say anything and nodded with a smile. Not long after, Zhao Qi came again and asked with concern, The kitchen said that you don't have an appetite. What's wrong? I'm fine. Maybe I'm tired from yesterday. Sangwon smiled. Zhao Qi saw that her eyes were clear, and she seemed to be in good spirits. He nodded and said with a smile, That's good. Rest in your room today and I won't disturb you. If you're bored and want to pass the time, ask Yuanyang to tell me. Do you like the osmanthus flowers downstairs? If you're in good spirits, you can go downstairs and get some fresh air. Thank you, young Marquis, for your kindness. Sangwon couldn't wait for him to leave and smiled perfunctorily. Zhao Qi smiled and stared deeply at her. He really got up and left. After a while, he asked someone to send a multicolored parrot over. He said that the parrot was very smart and could learn anything that was taught to it. He specially brought it to accompany her to relieve her boredom. Yuanyang hung it in front of the window and teased the parrot with bright eyes. Sure enough, the parrot was teasing it until it learned to speak in a high-pitched voice. Its beady eyes kept rolling around and no one knew what it was thinking. Sangwon and Yuanyang couldn't help but laugh when they saw it. Sangwon deliberately avoided Zhao Qi and didn't go downstairs for 3 days. But today, Zhao Qi came to her door again. Seeing him for the first time, Sangwon was a little flustered for no reason. She reluctantly smiled and said, Young Marquis, how come you have time to come over today? Zhao Qi smiled and thought, I have to go downstairs several times every day to ask Yuanyang about your situation. But since you don't want to be disturbed, why should I tell you? I see that you haven't gone out for several days. Don't you feel bored staying in the room? Go out for a walk. Today's weather is good and you don't feel cold. Oh right, I'm afraid it will frost in a few days. What kind of clothes do you like? I'll ask someone to make it for you. Zhao Qi smiled and said. Sangwon's mind only echoed his words. It's going to frost, winter is coming soon. Unknowingly, she had been by old Mistress Zhao's side for nearly a month. Every day in this month felt like a year. Was Fengju still sad for her, and still looking for her. Sangwon sighed softly and forced a smile. I don't really want to go out. I'm not in good spirits. I'll just stay in the room. As for clothes, I don't have any particular preferences. Young Marquis, you don't have to worry about it. Ordinary clothes will be fine. Zhao Qi didn't insist after hearing her words. He nodded and said with a smile, if that's the case, I'll ask someone to make it. If you don't want to go out, I'll accompany you for a chat. May I know what Wan Yang likes to do in the past? Playing chess, playing the zither, painting, playing pai gao, or playing shuang? You have to find something to do. Otherwise, won't you be bored? Don't be in a bad mood when your body hasn't recovered yet. Playing pai gao, playing shuang? Sangwon couldn't help but laugh. She shook her head and said, I'm not good at those and I don't want to use my brain. Young Marquis you, so it's like that. Zhao Qi smiled and said, then do you like to listen to opera? I'll ask someone to invite a group of actors to sing your favorite songs for you, okay? Or a little song, or a female lead storyteller is fine. Zhao Qi looked at Sangwon with a gentle smile. There wasn't the slightest impatience or disgust. Seeing him like that, Sangwon felt apologetic. She opened her mouth and said with a smile, let's go out for a walk. All right. There are still a few places in the garden to see. I'll accompany you. Zhao Qi smiled. Sangwon nodded and said, young Marquis, please wait downstairs for a moment. I'll come after changing. Zhao Qi got up and said with a smile, then I'll wait for you downstairs. Take your time, there's no need to rush. Seeing Zhao Qi go out, Yuan Yang hurriedly ordered a servant to prepare tea, pastries, chairs, cushions, and other things. Then she hurriedly helped Sangwon change her clothes. Young Marquis is really good to Mississippi. Our young Marquis has always had a bad temper. Even when talking to Madam, he would become impatient after a few words. I didn't expect him to be so considerate to Mississippi, hee. It's really rare. Yuan Yang said with a smile as she helped Sangwon change her clothes. Sangwon casually said, I don't dare. She didn't say anything else, but she felt more and more uneasy. From time to time, Yuan Yang would talk about the young Marquis by her ear. Ding Mama would also come over to greet her from time to time. There were also many hints in her words. Sangwon knew that they must have been instructed by Madame Zhao. Madame Zhao was pressuring her step by step. She didn't know how long she could resist. Now she could still pretend to be confused. If Madame Zhao lost her patience and forced her, what should she do? Chapter 299. She was a person who had lived a lifetime and was not afraid of death, but she was unwilling to die like this. She couldn't bear to part with her husband, the husband that she missed dearly. Even if she was going to die, she had to see him at least once. But at that time, she didn't dare to reveal her identity to Madame Zhao, and now she didn't dare to do so. Madame Zhao and Zhao Qi's persistence made her afraid. She knew that if she revealed her true identity at this time, it might bring trouble to Shifengju. She couldn't afford to gamble. Yuan Yang saw her lazy expression and couldn't help but disdain and despise her. She thought that this Miss One really didn't know how to appreciate kindness. The young Marquis was such a good person. Even a blind person could see his feelings for her. She should have been able to put on a show, but she was still acting like this. What was the point? Miss, you haven't drunk tea for a long time. Have some tea to moisten your throat. Before leaving, Yuan Yang poured a cup of tea and offered it to her with a smile. You're so considerate. Sangwon smiled and drank half of the cup. Yuan Yang put down the remaining tea and helped her down the stairs. Zhao Qi had been waiting for her in the corridor with his hands behind his back, looking in the direction of the stairs. When he saw her coming, he was in high spirits and his eyes brightened. He greeted her with a smile. Wan Yang. Young Marquis. Sangwon curtsied. Let's go. The camellias in the West Garden are just right. They're all famous products from Dali. You might like it when you see it. Zhao Qi smiled. Sangwon nodded with a smile and walked with him. Who knew that before they reached the West Garden, Sangwon suddenly stopped. She only felt that the sunlight in front of her was dazzling. Her vision flashed and then dimmed. She felt dizzy and her body swayed and fell backwards. Before she fainted, she heard Zhao Qi's panicked cry, Wan Yang. Then she fell into a strong arm. That strange man's breath made her realize who it was. She wanted to struggle, but she didn't have any strength. Her eyes closed and she completely lost consciousness. When Sangwon woke up, she was already lying in the room of Chui Lu. Her mind was still a mess. She tried hard to open her eyes, but her eyelids seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't open them. The noises in the room were very soft and careful, but she could feel that there were quite a few people. What the hell is going on? Hurry up and say it. Don't waste words on me. Speak clearly. Zhao Qi's impatient voice rang out. Then came Madame Zhao's hurried voice. Cheer, don't worry. If you urge Imperial Physician Ruan like this, he won't dare to say anything. Dr. Ruan Yang was fine before. Why did she suddenly fall into a coma? Tell me, how can she wake up? Imperial Dr. Ruan was a little scared by Zhao Qi's roar. He originally wanted to be tactful, but after hearing Zhao Qi's words, he didn't dare. He hurriedly cupped his hands and said, Madam young Earl, don't worry. This girl has accumulated the evil wind in her body. At this time she couldn't bear it and fainted. After I treat her with acupuncture, I will prescribe some medicine to decoct and take every day. After a few days of recuperation, she will recover with a light diet. Madam young Earl, don't worry. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. That's good. That's good. Madame Zhao hurriedly said. Sure, you heard it. Yang will be fine. Yang is lucky. She will turn misfortune into blessing. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and treat her. Zhao Qi ignored Madame Zhao's words and stared at Imperial Physician Ruan. Imperial Physician Ruan hurriedly said, Yes, yes, I will prepare it right away. Please, Madam young Earl, please leave. Leave what? Zhao Qi said angrily. I'm here. You do your thing. I won't disturb you. Be gentle. Don't hurt Yang. Leave. Are you kidding? Zhao Qi thought, although you are an imperial physician, you are also a man. Yang is a beauty. How can I be at ease if I leave? This. Imperial Physician Ruan looked at Madame Zhao for help. Madame Zhao smiled bitterly and apologized. Imperial Physician Ruan had to agree. He prepared the gold needles, medicinal wine and clean cotton cloth. He lit the lamp to disinfect the gold needles. Then he began to treat Sangwon's chest, abdomen and neck. In a burst of pain, Sangwon's breathing stagnated and she fainted again. When she woke up again, the light in the room was already lit. Under the bright light, Zhao Qi's eyes were unusually bright, and the smile on his face was also soft. He was sitting on the stool in front of her bed. When he saw her wake up, he couldn't help but be happy. He smiled and said, Yang, you finally woke up. Are you better? Do you still feel uncomfortable? Sangwon glanced at him and sighed in her heart. He really didn't have to treat her like this. Really? How could she bear it when he treated her like this? It was impossible for her to respond. She already had someone in her heart that she could no longer let go of. I'm much better. Thank you, young Earl. It's getting late. Young Earl, you should go back quickly. Sangwon said reluctantly. I'll go back after seeing you take the medicine. Zhao Qi was not at ease. He said gently, Yang, don't argue with me. I just care about you and want you to get better quickly. You don't have to have any burden in your heart. Really? Seeing his firm attitude, Sangwon knew that it was useless to argue with him. She had to acquiesce. Zhao Qi was very happy to see this. He brought the soup porridge, and so on to her and made sure to handle it himself. He felt that it was the happiest thing in the world to be able to do things for her. For a few days, Sangwon took medicine and recuperated. Zhao Qi accompanied her by the bed and treated her very well. When Madame Zhao received Ding Mama and Yuanyang's report, the corners of her mouth hooked up into an elegant arc. She smiled at Ding Mama and said, Yuanyang did the right thing. This medicine was not in vain. This time she should know that my son really cares about her. Ding Mama also smiled and said, How can a young lady not be moved when someone treats her so gently? Moreover, people who are sick are fragile. If she's not moved by this, it can be seen that she really has a heart of stone. Otherwise, there must be some other reason. Madame Zhao's heart skipped a beat. She thought about it and suppressed that faint thought. She smiled and said, I can't care so much. Her life was saved by me. My son didn't disgrace her. As long as my son is happy, I can't care about anything else. Ding Mama said with a smile. Speaking of which, young Earl is very happy these days. The smile on his face can't be stopped. Madame I'm afraid that we're going to have a happy occasion soon. Madame Zhao liked to hear these words. She couldn't help but smile happily. But, Ding Mama said again, does Madame really intend to give the position of legal wife to this Miss Wan? Won't this? Madame Zhao sighed and said, how could I not know what you're saying? But the knot in Er's heart is hard to untie. If we don't do this, he definitely won't let it go. Let's just leave it at that for now. Men are all like this. Once you get them, you'll get tired of them after a few days. At that time, everything will be easy to solve. Ding Mama's heart trembled. Sangwon's pretty face and elegant bearing flashed before her eyes. She couldn't help but feel a sense of pity. If one day, young Earl really got tired of her and got tired of her, with her background, wouldn't her life and death be at Madame's mercy? If she died of an accident or a sudden death due to illness, no one would stand up for her. You're thinking too much. Madame Zhao glanced at Ding Mama and sighed. This son of mine, who knows if his mind will change? In this household, Wan Yang will have a place no matter what. Even if I let go of her, who knows if he'll remember her one day. At that time, where would I go to find an identical one for him? Besides, Wan Yang's life was saved by me. This can be considered fate. As long as it's possible, I won't do anything to her. Ding Mama was slightly embarrassed and hurriedly said with a smile, Madame is benevolent. It's the old slave's heart that is narrow-minded. Madame Zhao smiled confidently. Ding Mama raised her eyes. In fact, she really wanted to ask what Madame would do if young Earl was serious about Miss Wan and didn't get tired of her one day. Thinking that it was inconvenient to ask this question, she held back. Madame had always had her own ideas. Since she was sure that young Earl would give up after getting her and losing her freshness, she must have her reasons. Moreover, after the boat capsized that day, 2 servants were suddenly swept into the river at a bend. Coincidentally, there was a bamboo hanging on the water's surface. The 2 of them clung tightly to it to save their lives. As for the daughter-in-law, the young maidservant, and Luya, just like Sangwon, it was unknown whether they were alive or dead. When Luya woke up, she was swept to a flat beach by the river. At that time, it was already late at night, and she was awakened by the cold. When she opened her eyes, the sky was dotted with stars and the surroundings were dark. The whistling wind blew from the mountains and from the river. Her body that was soaked in the water shivered even more from the cold. Luya was stunned. She hurriedly endured the pain all over her body and struggled to get up. She found a place where there was no wind and forcefully wrung her clothes. She hugged herself into a ball, cold and hungry. At this time, the only thing she could be sure of was that she was still alive. As for other things, she didn't dare to think about it, and didn't dare to cry out loud. She could only bite her lips and silently shed tears. With great difficulty, she managed to endure until dawn. Luya walked along the path towards the wide terrain. She knew that she must find someone as soon as possible and ascertain young mistress's whereabouts. A group of people and horses slowly came on the main road. There were carriages and many servants riding horses. In the middle of the group of servants was a handsome young man riding a red horse. He was wearing a sapphire blue round collar robe and a pair of pink boots. Suddenly, a small figure dashed over from a distance. As it ran, it was waving and shouting something. It seemed that it was running in the direction of this group of people. Everyone couldn't help but be curious and looked into the distance. Yo, where did this beggar come from? These beggars are quite bold these days. They even dare to wave and stop people. I don't know if they want to beg or hitch a ride. A servant teased with bad intentions. When everyone heard this, they burst into laughter. The young man in embroidered clothes also laughed and said in a bad mood, "Enough! This beggar didn't provoke you. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Let's hurry up." That servant hurriedly agreed and said with a smile, "Young master, you have a good heart. A true bodhisattva's heart." That beggar desperately ran over. As the figure got closer, Everyone could see that it was a woman. Chapter 300. Although her voice was short of breath, it was clearly heard by everyone. She shouted with a hoarse voice, "Lecher! Lecher! Wait, wait!" Everyone was baffled. They looked at each other, and were dumbfounded. The young man in embroidered robes was startled and his face turned green and white. He didn't know what to do and was extremely embarrassed. This person was Zhuang Weixian. In this world, who would call him Lecher? Other than the little girl from the Sher family, who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, who else could it be? Zhuang Weixian was shocked and his face changed slightly. What happened? How did the little girl become like this? While he was thinking, Luya had already run in front of Zhuang Weixian. Standing in front of the majestic horse, she looked even more pitiful and weak. She raised her head to look at him, sniffled, and said with a sobbing tone, "Lecher, how can you be so fast? I saw you in the valley, but I chased after you for a long time before I finally caught up with you." Silence. Everyone was stunned. Is this little beggar crazy? What is she saying to our young master? Lecher? What a joke. Our young master is not a playboy. To be called a lecher. And this person is a dirty little beggar. This is too strange. Or is our young master's taste so heavy? Hey, you little beggar. Someone shouted with a sullen face. Zhuang Weixian looked over and stopped. He jumped off his horse and pulled Luya away from the crowd and asked, "Why are you here? What happened? Are you the only one?" Luya was tired, hungry, frightened and scared. It was not easy for her to hold on until now. When she heard Zhuang Weixian's question, she suddenly burst into tears. Kneeling down, she hugged his leg and sobbed, "Lecher, help me, I beg you, please help me. Save our family's young mistress." Your family's young mistress? Zhuang Weixian was even more shocked. His expression changed and he hurriedly said, "Get up quickly. What happened? Tell me quickly." Luya was sobbing as she spoke, but Zhuang Weixian couldn't hear her clearly. He smiled bitterly and said, "Miss Luya, don't be like this. Why are you hugging me? Get up quickly. How can I help you if you don't tell me clearly?" Zhuang Weixian glanced at the crowd awkwardly. Everyone was staring at him with their eyes wide open. Their eyeballs were about to fall to the ground. He couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Since the other party was a little girl, he couldn't push her away, but she still hugged him tightly. Luya was stunned. Her face suddenly turned hot. She hurriedly got up and wiped the tears on her dirty face. She briefly recounted what happened yesterday and begged with tears in her eyes, "Lecher, wait." Zhuang Weixian smiled bitterly. "Can you not call me that? No one has ever called me that before. I'm not used to it. You should call me young Master Zhuang." Luya was even more embarrassed. She lowered her head and almost buried it in her chest. She hurriedly nodded and said, Yes, young Master Zhuang. I'm sorry. All right. You just follow us. Go to the front and change your clothes. Find a doctor to check on you and eat something. Don't worry. I'll ask someone to rush back to the Sher family to report," Zhuang Weixian said. "Young Master Zhuang." Luya raised her head and hurriedly said, "There were 2 servants guarding the carriage on the shore yesterday. They must have rushed back to report. I'm worried that my family's young mistress might be in danger. Can you arrange to hire some people to help look for her along the shore? We can also look at the villages on both sides of the river. As long as we can find my family's young mistress, my family's young master will be grateful to you." Zhuang Weixian was secretly surprised that she still had an idea. He nodded and said, "All right. Since you're fine, your family's young mistress should be fine too. You don't have to worry. When we reach the town, I'll arrange for people to look for her. I'll also send someone back to the Sher family to inform them. That should be enough." Luya was overjoyed and nodded repeatedly. "Thank you, young Master Zhuang. My family's young master will be grateful to you. Thank you, young Master Zhuang." As soon as she released the breath she had been holding, she couldn't hold on any longer. She thanked him and her body went limp. "Luya." Zhuang Weixian was shocked and hurriedly reached out to help her. "I'm sorry." Luya looked at him apologetically. How could she stand up? Instead, she staggered and bumped into his arms. Zhuang Weixian was caught off guard and stepped back. From the other side, the two were entangled in each other's arms. The servants hurriedly turned their faces away and did not dare to look. Young Master Zhuang really had a strong taste. Don't move. Zhuang Weixian supported her and looked at her. He sighed. It's hard for you to hold on until now with your injuries. If you hadn't met me, if she hadn't met him, what would have happened? Zhuang Weixian's heart skipped a beat. He shook his head to get rid of that thought, and carried her up. Seeing that she was struggling, he shouted, Don't move. You'd better save your strength for when you return to find your master. Luya did not struggle after hearing that. However, she was hooked by his words and tears welled up in her eyes again. Young mistress, what if something happened to her? What should I do? Luya was right. The two servants who stayed on the shore immediately sent the news back to the Shi family. Wang broke out in a cold sweat. She had recovered from her illness, but her face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Her body trembled slightly and she said with a trembling voice, What should I do? What should I do? How could this happen? How could this happen? When Fengji returns, how am I going to explain this to him? And the Sang family, how am I going to explain this to them? Wang turned around and shouted at the servant. The servant bowed his head and knelt on the ground, not daring to move. How could he dare to say a word? If something happened to his master, no matter what the reason was, it was all because of the servant's lack of protection. Even the servant's death could not absolve him of his sins, not to mention that he had returned unscathed. Aunt, please calm down. Gu Fengzi's eyes were filled with tears and her voice was choked with sobs. Her heart was satisfied and she said, You can't blame them for this. Who would have thought that something would happen to the ferry in the middle of the river? She then asked the servant, Did you send someone to search along both sides of the river? There were so many people on the ferry, was there no news at all? The servant heaved a sigh of relief and quickly replied. Replying to Miss Gu, this servant came back to report that Xiao Shun had already asked someone to help search. This servant also doesn't know the current situation. Old mistress, don't worry. Young mistress is blessed by the heavens and will definitely be fine. Shut up, Wang said hatefully. All of you don't serve her properly, yet you're acting all righteous. What if something happened? What should we do? What should we do? Wang's heart was burning with anxiety. Gu Fengzi tried to persuade her with tears in her eyes and signaled for the servant to withdraw. The servant couldn't wait any longer and quietly retreated with a lowered body. Aunt, the most important thing right now is to quickly find someone. Why don't we have the head steward of the estate personally bring someone over? Time is of the essence, we can't delay it any longer. Gu Fengzi persuaded Wang with great difficulty and hurriedly said. Wang was at her wit's end. So how could she care about anything else? Whatever Gu Fengzi said, it was naturally what it was. She suddenly understood and said, Right, we have to quickly find someone. We have to quickly send someone over. Nurse Jiang, quickly send someone to summon the head steward. Nurse Jiang bowed and went out to pass on the message. When she returned, she said, Old mistress, should we quickly send someone to inform the young master? Wang immediately froze and did not speak for a long time. Something happened to Sangwan. It was reasonable to say that she could not hide it from Shi Fengjiu, her husband. However, Wang could not help but feel guilty. She was really guilty. She was afraid that her son would resent her when he came back. As his wife and mother, she was well aware of how worried her son was now. Although she was not very satisfied with Sangwan, she did not hate her. She was even more unwilling to see her son sad because of this matter. One could not help but feel regretful. She beat her leg and said, It's all my fault for being useless. It's all my fault for being useless. Why did I get sick? That teacher is too good at coaxing people. What about going to Mount Tai to offer incense? What about asking for a talisman? Didn't I get better even if I didn't get it back? Gu Fengzi hurriedly said. Aunt, how can Bodhisattva's words not be accurate? With Feng Er's small knowledge, although elder sister did not get the talisman and incense, she still suffered this disaster. This is her filial piety towards you. I think Bodhisattva will be moved by this, and you will naturally recover. What she said sounded reasonable. Wang was stunned and her expression turned ugly. She said with tears in her eyes, "If that's the case, Wan Nyang, she most likely went and suffered this disaster for her." "No, she won't," Gu Fengzi hurriedly said. "Aunt, don't think too much. She definitely won't." Nanny Jiang saw that Gu Fengzi was trying to persuade her, but the topic was getting further and further away. She sighed in her heart and could only remind her, "Old mistress, young master will find out sooner or later," in the old slave's opinion. But what if big cousin gets anxious and on the way? Enough! Before Gu Fengzi could finish her words, she was interrupted by Wang. Wang did not forget what Shi Fengjiu had encountered in Handan. If it were to happen again, her old life would definitely be lost. She made a prompt decision and said, "Fenger is right. We can't tell Fengjiu about this. Just tell him that there's an urgent matter at home, and ask him to hurry back without delay. Go quickly." Ai. Wang Shi sighed deeply. Nanny Jiang was right. Sooner or later, she would not be able to hide this matter from her son. The earlier she told him, the better. It would save him from having a knot in his heart, which would affect their relationship in the future. Gu Fengzi originally wanted to hide it from Shi Fengjiu for the time being, but since Wang had already instructed her, she could only give up. She then tried to persuade Wang. Seeing that the knot in Wang's heart was difficult to untie, Gu Fengzi quickly understood something. Although Wang was worried about her daughter-in-law's safety, she was more worried that her son would not be able to explain why her daughter-in-law went out alone and met with danger. Even with Bodhisattva's words as evidence, Wang still felt that the evidence was insufficient. Chapter 301. Gu Fengzi sent everyone away and said to Wang gently, "Aunt, this trip to Mount Tai was requested by elder sister. This is elder sister's filial piety. No one knew that something like this would happen. Aunt, you have always been soft-hearted and benevolent. I'm afraid that you won't be able to sleep well at night after being shocked by this news. You have to take care of yourself. Otherwise, eldest cousin will be even sadder when he returns." Wang suddenly understood, and felt that her heart was suddenly enlightened. She nodded and said, Yes, she requested to go herself. She insisted on it. I didn't force her. You, Nanny Jiang, and Teacher Li were all present at that time, weren't they? You all saw it too." Yes. Gu Fengzi hurriedly said. "Aunt, you even specially instructed us to bring appropriate people with us. But this is a natural disaster. No one could have predicted it." You're right. Wang sighed softly. Her uneasy heart finally settled back into her stomach. Following the head butler's orders, they hurriedly left the Fu. This matter couldn't be hidden at all. Mama Li, Xingji, Hongyi, and the others in Ning Garden all cried when they heard the news. Mama Li was even more heartbroken. On one hand, she couldn't bear to part with Sang Wan and her goddaughter. On the other hand, she didn't know what would happen when Shi Fengjiu returned. The second and third branches also quickly heard the news and hurriedly went to Wang's side to comfort her. Naturally, they all tried to persuade her. When Wang heard this, she couldn't help but cry again. When Zhou Jingyi heard the news, her heart skipped a beat. She was so shocked that her face turned white. She hurriedly asked someone to call Shi Fengming back from the business. She had never been so flustered before. Shi Fengming was shocked when he received the news. He put down the matters in his hands and rushed to the Fu. He rushed to the garden and shouted, Jingyi, how are you? How is the child?" He rushed into the room and anxiously held Zhou Jingyi's hand. "Jingyi, what's wrong? Did mother come to find trouble with you again? Is the child okay?" Zhou Jingyi was stunned by his words. After a moment she hurriedly said, "The child and I are fine. Why did you suddenly say that?" "That's good. It's good that you're fine." Shi Fengming heaved a huge sigh of relief. She was so anxious to get someone to bring him back, so he naturally thought that something had happened between her and the child. "Did you miss me? I'll accompany you in the manor in the afternoon." Shi Fengming patted her gently. His wife and children were the most important. As for the Shi family's business, his ambition had never been big. Zhou Jingyi's heart was filled with sadness and worry. She only regained her senses after being disturbed by him. She did not know whether to laugh or cry as she sighed. We've been together every day and we just met this morning. I miss you so much. Can't you wait for half a day? Seeing him looking at her in confusion, Zhou Jingyi's eyes welled up with tears. You still don't know, right? Something happened to sister-in-law. I don't know what will happen now. Thinking of the past when the two of them got along, thinking of how Sangwon looked after and comforted her during those difficult days, Zhou Jingyi burst into tears and hurriedly wiped them away with a handkerchief. Don't cry. You're pregnant, be careful not to affect the baby. Sister-in-law? How could something happen to sister-in-law? Didn't she go to Mount Tai to offer incense? Shi Fengming saw his wife crying and hurriedly coaxed her gently. Something happened on the way there. Zhou Jingyi stopped crying and told Shi Fengming what she heard. Shi Fengming did not speak for a long time and sighed. Sister-in-law is really pitiful. I don't know if she's dead or alive. If Big Brother comes back and finds out, won't he be heartbroken? What nonsense are you talking about? Zhou Jingyi glared at him and said, Sister-in-law will be fine. She will definitely be fine. Shi Fengming knew that he had misspoken and hurriedly said with a smile, Don't be anxious, don't be anxious. If you say that she will be fine, then she will be fine. Sister-in-law is a good person. I also hope that she will be well. Speaking of which, Big Aunt is also too much. How could she let sister-in-law bring only a few people out on such a long journey? When Big Brother comes back, there will be a lot of trouble. He then said, Jingyi, don't worry. If my mother also uses this method to order you around, you don't have to pay attention to her. Just tell me. Zhou Jingyi rolled her eyes at him and sighed. Whether or not Big Aunt is right, we shouldn't talk about it. Don't talk nonsense. I called you back to discuss it with you. Why don't you make a trip to and see if there's anything you can help with? In the past, sister-in-law took care of me a lot. When I think of her now, I feel suffocated. Shi Fengming hated hearing words like, in the past the most, especially when it came from his wife's mouth. When his wife said this, he couldn't say anything. He thought for a while and said, I know you're anxious, but this matter can't be rushed. Since the head steward has already gone personally, how can he be wrong? I think that Big Brother will be back in a few days. When that time comes, I'll go with him. We can take care of each other on the way. Zhou Jingyi thought for a while and felt that it was reasonable, so she nodded and said, Then let's do it this way. If you go with Big Brother, I think everyone in the residence will be more at ease. Big Brother is so good to sister-in-law. If he gets agitated and does something impulsive, you can persuade him. I also have the same idea. Shi Fengming nodded. Suddenly, he said with a bit of jealousy, Jingyi, am I better to you than Big Brother is to sister-in-law? Zhou Jingyi rolled her eyes at him and said in annoyance, Who has the time to talk to you about this? I only hope that sister-in-law can come back safely as soon as possible. Shi Fengming was speechless. He thought to himself, Is there a direct connection between these two matters? You're not willing to answer me? But it doesn't matter. You'll answer me one day. When he received the letter, Shi Fengju had only been in the capital for 2 days. When he saw the letter, he thought that something had happened to his mother. He immediately became anxious and hurriedly questioned the person who delivered the letter. The person who delivered the letter repeatedly assured that first Madam was fine. Only then did Shi Fengju feel relieved. Then he sank into another kind of uneasiness. This letter was not written by Sangwon, and Sangwon did not send him a single word. This was not right. He asked what exactly happened at home. Although the person who delivered the letter was clever, and had received repeated warnings from Wang and Gu Fengzi before he came, how could he be a match for Shi Fengju? Shi Fengju used a few tricks to make him confess everything. When he heard this, Shi Fengju was completely stunned. His mind and heart were completely blank. He was at a loss and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. It was as if his entire being had suddenly become empty. His wife, his Wan Yang, had actually disappeared. He didn't know whether she was alive or dead, and her whereabouts were unknown. Shi Fengju was shocked and angry. With a cold face, he interrogated the person for the details. This time, the person who delivered the letter really didn't know. He was forced to kowtow and beg for mercy. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of the person, Shi Fengju couldn't help but feel resentful. He immediately brought along 4 to 5 servants, including Chang Huan, and rode a fast horse back home. Galloping day and night, they arrived back at the residence in 5 days. On this day, after lunch, Wang Shi was accompanied by Gu Fengzi to the corridor to digest her food. While listening to Gu Fengzi's idle chatter, a maidservant came to report that the young master had returned. Both of them were taken aback and looked at each other. So fast! Before Wang could give any other instructions, Shi Fengju had already barged in. He had been in a hurry for days. His navy blue robe was stained with dust, his face was pale and haggard, and his lips were chapped. He suddenly appeared in front of Wang. Seeing him like this, Wang's tears immediately fell. She went forward and said with a trembling voice, Fengju, Fengju, how did you become like this? What happened to you? What happened? Mother. Shi Fengju's heart was filled with resentment. His eyes were cold as he held on to Wang and said indifferently, I'm fine. What happened? What happened to Wan Yang? Have you found her? Big cousin, you should change your clothes and freshen up first. Looking at you like this. Shut up. Shi Fengju didn't even look at Gu Fengzi. He continued to stare at Wang with eyes full of hope. Mother, tell me, have you found Wan Yang? Wang opened her mouth. The words that she had been preparing for several days in her stomach couldn't come out. She only felt a sharp pain in her heart. She touched Shi Fengju's face with trembling hands and tears flowed down her face. Aunt. Gu Fengzi hurriedly went forward and said sadly, Big cousin, about this matter, and also. Didn't you hear me tell you to shut up? Shi Fengju stared at her coldly. Get out. Big cousin. I told you to get out. Do you need someone to invite you out before you can leave? Shi Fengju's tone was calm, but his expression were completely different. Gu Fengzi only felt a cold breath from the bottom of her feet to the top of her head. She subconsciously let go of her hand and slowly stepped back. She had never seen Shi Fengju like this before. The aura he emitted was enough to drive people crazy. Shi Fengju had been looking at Wang Shi the entire time. His tone was calm and empty. Mother, what happened to Sangwan? Is she back? Was it a serious injury? I told her to take good care of herself, and that's what she did. How could she treat me like this? It's my fault, it's all my fault. Wang couldn't help but cry bitterly. Fengju, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have let her go out. Fengju, you should blame me. Young master. Nanny Jiang was also a little frightened. She carefully went forward to support the crying Wang and sighed to Shi Fengju. Old mistress is also very upset about this matter. She hasn't had a good day these past few days. Please don't. So there's still no news of Wan Yang? Shi Fengju weakly let go of Wang and asked. Looking at his calm eyes that were filled with despair, Nanny Jiang couldn't bear to see him like this. She couldn't help but move away, not daring to look him in the eye. Gritting her teeth, she nodded and said, Yes, there's still no news of young mistress. Shi Fengju was silent for a moment, nodded and turned to leave. Fengju. Fengju. Wang cried. Where are you going? Where are you going? Do you hate mother? Fengju. Shi Fengju didn't turn back. He only stopped and shook his head before saying softly, Why would I hate you? You're my mother. I'm fine. I'm just a little tired. I'll go back to Ning Garden to rest for a while. Don't let anyone disturb me. Without waiting for Wang's reply, he left the main courtyard. Chapter 302. Wang's legs went soft and she fell onto Nanny Jiang as she cried. Nanny Jiang, look, Fengju is treating me like this, he's treating me like this. Old mistress. Nanny Jiang hurriedly motioned for Xiao Chun and the others to help Wang back into the house before consoling. Old mistress, don't be sad. Young master is upset, you have to let him vent. He's really upset. Wang clutched her chest and cried. But how could I have expected something like this to happen? Fengju, how could Fengju treat me like this? After saying that, Wang cried again. Nanny Jiang and the others hurriedly coaxed her and helped Wang back into the house. It was a chaotic scene. Shi Fengju returned to Ning Garden. When Mama Li Xingji and the others saw him, they couldn't help but feel sad. Especially when Mama Li saw him like this, her eyes turned red and tears fell. Afraid that she would make him sad, She quickly held back her tears and said with a trembling voice, "Young master, you've worked hard. Quickly take a rest. The old slave will get someone to bring water for you to wash up." Shifengju shook his head. "Nanny, I want to be alone for a while. Come back when I call for someone." Mama Li looked at him and didn't try to persuade him anymore. She nodded with tears in her eyes. Okay, you should rest first. Don't worry too much. Young mistress is such a good person. She'll definitely be fine. If young mistress sees you like this, she'll definitely be distressed." Shifengju's heart suddenly ached, and he walked into the warm room with a pale face. Everything in the warm room hadn't changed. Her half-read book was still spread out on the table, and the white porcelain teacup with the landscape characters was also the one she used every day. Shifengju looked around silently, and felt his body and heart turn cold. He didn't dare to think about what he would do if she wasn't in this room. If she wasn't by his side anymore. The sky gradually darkened, but Shifengju still sat there motionless. His heartbeat stopped and time stopped. It was as if everything had lost its meaning to him. He had never felt so lost before. He had never felt so flustered before. He felt as if he was a walking corpse. He never thought that he would feel this way one day. Shifengju squinted his eyes in discomfort. Then he slowly opened them and said coldly, "Didn't I say you're not allowed to come in? Get out." "Eldest cousin, don't be like this. If big sister finds out about this, she'll be sad too." Gu Fengzi's soft and bitter voice rang out beside him. "It's you." Shifengju slowly tilted his head and glanced at her. Gu Fengzi was overjoyed, but before she could open her mouth to speak, she heard Shifengju shout, "Get out! You shouldn't be here. Wan Yang won't like you coming here. Get out!" Gu Fengzi bit her lips and stubbornly looked up at him. "Get out!" Shifengju shouted. "Gu Fengzi, don't ever appear in Ning Garden again. This is not a place for you to come." After he said this, he loudly called for Mama Li and the others. He coldly said, "Chase her out. She's not allowed to take half a step in here in the future. Eldest cousin, I know you have resentment in your heart. If you're not happy, you can take it out on me. I don't mind." Gu Fengzi said with tears in her eyes. "I'm also very sad that something like this happened to big sister." Shifengju coldly smiled and stared at her. "Is that so? It's best that this matter has nothing to do with you. Otherwise, I won't let you go. Our friendship has come to an end. What I regret the most is that I didn't let you leave the manor earlier. Why haven't you left yet?" Gu Fengzi's weak body trembled. She bit her lips and sadly looked at Shifengju. Her eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. How can you talk about me like this? This matter, how does it have anything to do with me? Eldest cousin, how can you talk about me like this?" Because of her trembling and sadness, her words were also fragmented. Shifengju only coldly stared at her and loudly said, "Nanny Xingji, what are you waiting for?" Mama Li and Xingji were already waiting outside the door. When they heard Shifengju suddenly say that this matter had something to do with Gu Fengzi, they were all shocked. Mama Li and Xingji's expressions changed greatly. Previously, they were only worried and sad and didn't think of anything else. Now that they heard Shifengju say this, they felt that this matter was very likely. "Miss Biao, you should leave." Mama Li gave a look. Xingji and the other maidservants came forward and forcefully pulled Gu Fengzi out. Gu Fengzi didn't struggle. She only sobbed and cried. Her teary eyes stared unblinkingly at Shifengju until she was pulled out and pushed out of Ning Garden. "Miss Biao, you also heard eldest young master's words. Don't come here again in the future." Mama Li glanced at her and said lightly. She turned around and ordered the people to close the door. The red-painted door knocker with a beast head was slammed shut. Gu Fengzi's tear-filled face suddenly became ferocious. She hatefully glared at the door knocker that seemed to be baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. She gritted her teeth and said, "Eldest cousin, it's too late. It's useless. That slut, she will never come back. She can't come back. Eldest cousin, you will be mine in the end. The mistress of this garden will only be me." Shifengju really regretted it very much. If he didn't have so many scruples, if he had sent Gu Fengzi away with a strong attitude earlier, perhaps none of this would have happened. Wan Yang was innocent. He actually knew that she was very unhappy in her heart. Although she didn't say anything, how could he not feel it? She didn't want to force him too much and make things difficult for him. He also thought that he could protect her, but in the end, she was wronged and her life or death was unknown. What else could he do other than feel sad and helpless here? Wet nurse! Wet nurse! Shi Fengju suddenly called out loudly. Eldest young master, the old slave is here. Mama Li hurriedly came in after hearing this. Shi Fengju tiredly said, have someone prepare hot water. I want to take a bath. Also prepare some food. I'm hungry. Yes, yes. Mama Li repeatedly agreed as she listened. Tears couldn't help but flow out of her eyes, and she hurriedly wiped them away. Wet nurse! Shi Fengju suddenly called out to her and slowly said, pass down the order. Everything in Ning Garden remains the same. You all clean up as usual. No one is allowed to touch anything. Also, no one is allowed to come in, including my mother. Just say that this is what I want. Wet nurse, can you do this? Mama Li was startled and hurriedly nodded. Eldest young master, don't worry. Young mistress. We servants didn't dare to touch anything. We're all cleaning up as usual. Since eldest young master has said so, the old slave will remember. He won't let anyone take a step inside. Shi Fengju nodded and motioned for her to leave. After taking a bath and eating some food, Shi Fengju returned to his room to rest. However, lying on this large bed where he had once been affectionate with her, Shi Fengju's heart was filled with layers of bitterness and loneliness. His mouth tasted bitter. In this room, there were shadows of her everywhere. Whether his eyes were open or closed, he could see her every frown and smile. He could see her sitting in front of the dressing table and carefully combing her soft and beautiful hair. Sometimes he would even go up to her and help her with her hair. Sometimes, he could feel her lying in the crook of his arm. Her smooth and white little face was pressed against his chest. Her breathing was even as she slept soundly. Her fine black hair was entwined with his, and they were inseparable. They were once so close, but now they were all alone. Shi Fengju didn't dare to think about how he would spend the next few nights if he didn't have her. Wan Yang, you can't leave me. You can't leave me like this. Wan Yang, we haven't had a child yet. You haven't become a mother, and I haven't become a father. This is what you owe me. You can't just leave like this. Shi Fengju said in a low voice. His eyes gradually became moist. Shi Fengju got up as the sky began to brighten. It was still too early. Only the servants were sweeping the leaves in the courtyard, wiping the pillars, cleaning the courtyard, and boiling water to wash the face. Xingji and the others were still sleeping. Only Mama Li was worried about Shi Fengju. She had been keeping watch outside last night. When she heard the noise, she hurriedly got up. Eldest young master, why are you up so early? Sleep a little longer. Mama Li looked at him worriedly. I can't sleep. Wet nurse, I can't sleep whenever I think of her. Shi Fengju shook his head and smiled bitterly. Wet nurse, you're up just in time. Ask someone to help me wake up Chang Huan and the others. We'll leave the manor in half an hour. Where are you going? Mama Li's heart tightened. Shi Fengju said. I'm going to find Wan Yang. To White River Town. Mama Li opened her mouth and said. Eldest young master, don't worry. The head butler and the others went there a few days ago. Even if you want to go, you don't have to rush. Oh right, last night second young master came to find you. Old slave said that you had already rested, so he went back. Who knows, maybe he'll come to find you later. There's also first madam. Wet nurse. Shi Fengju gently called out to her, interrupting her. His tone was firm. Mama Li knew that she couldn't persuade him, so she could only sigh and say, okay, old slave will go now. Half an hour later, Shi Fengju, Chang Huan, and the others left the Shi family on their horses and sped towards White River Town. At this time, the Shi family had just welcomed the liveliness of dawn. Wang also didn't sleep well last night. She woke up early in the morning and hadn't washed up yet. Gu Fangzi also came. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red and swollen. She called out, Aunt, you're here. Wang saw her like this and felt even more sad. She sighed and said, "Good child, your big cousin is upset, so he's a bit impatient. Don't argue with him, okay?" Aunt. Gu Fangzi shook her head and blinked her red and swollen eyes. She hurriedly smiled and said, "How can I argue with big cousin? He and big sister have always loved each other, so it's inevitable that he would be upset when he found out about such a thing. It's good that he's willing to vent and not keep it in his heart." "You're so sensible." Wang sighed. "Aunt, this is what I should do." Gu Fangzi forced a smile and said, "I'll help you comb your hair. I'm afraid big cousin will wake up soon." Wang nodded and called Guo Xiuchuan. "Go to Ning Garden and see if Fengju has woken up. Ask Mama Li if he was well yesterday." Chapter 303. Xiao Chun agreed and left. After a while she rushed back and reported, old mistress, Mama Li said that young master brought Chang Huan and the rest out of the residence at dawn. He said that he went to White River Town." "What?" Wang and Gu Fangzi were both shocked. Gu Fangzi's face turned even paler. Her hands that were hanging by her side clenched tightly into her palms. Her heart was filled with jealousy. "What is he trying to do? What is he trying to do?" Wang cried sadly again. "He still hates me, his mother. He left in a hurry and didn't even say goodbye to me. He's torturing himself like this. Is he trying to take my life too?" Nanny Jiang, Gu Fangzi, and the rest quickly went forward to persuade her. Aunt, don't be like this," Gu Fangzi quickly said. "There are servants following him, don't worry. Big cousin will feel better after venting his anger. He's not someone who doesn't know the severity of the situation. Don't you know him? Aunt, you have to take care of yourself." "That's right, old mistress. Young master has always been steady in his actions. There are also servants taking care of White River Town, so don't worry," Nanny Jiang added. "Is this something that a calm and steady person would do?" "He's changed, he's no longer the Fengju of the past. For a woman, he actually became like this." Wang was heartbroken and her tears kept flowing. Gu Fangzi was startled and did not try to persuade her. She also cried silently. Her tears were even more joyful than Wang's. Wang's words completely hurt her heart. Her aunt was right, he's changed, he's no longer the Fengju of the past. For a woman he became like this. But this woman was not her, Gu Fangzi. Nanny Jiang saw that Gu Fangzi was also crying and could not help but become more anxious. She hurriedly said, "Miss Gu, don't cry. Quickly persuade old mistress. First, madam, don't be sad. First, young master will be fine." Gu Fangzi glanced at Nanny Jiang out of the corner of her eyes. She continued to wipe her tears and didn't say anything. However, she sneered in her heart. She thought, "Now you want me to persuade first, madam? Don't treat me as a blind fool who doesn't know anything. How many good words have you put in for that bitch Sangwan? How many good things have you ruined for me? Now that you know you can't count on that bitch, you're counting on me." Auntie. Just as she was feeling sad, she saw Shi Fengming rushing in from outside. Seeing this, he was stunned and quickly lowered his voice. "Eldest aunt. It's Fengming." Wang hurriedly wiped her tears and forced a smile. "Why are you here so early?" Shi Fengming secretly regretted his rashness and quickly smiled apologetically. "Oh, I see. I heard that big brother rushed to White River Town early in the morning. I came to inform you. In a while I will rush over to meet up with big brother. Auntie, don't worry, I will take good care of big brother." Good. Wang was overjoyed when she heard this. Her spirits were lifted and she quickly said, "Fengming, you're so considerate. Good child, you're becoming more and more mature. With you going, Auntie will be much more at ease." Shi Fengming, who had never been praised like this before, was overwhelmed by the favor. For a moment he didn't know how to respond. He vaguely laughed for a while before saying with a smile, "Don't worry. I will definitely take good care of big brother, and won't let him do anything stupid." Shi Fengming didn't have a plan when he spoke. He just said what he thought in his heart. However, when these words reached Wang's ears, her face turned pale. Her heart suddenly jumped a few times, and she cried out involuntarily, "Stupid thing. Please don't." Please don't. Fengming, you have to help me bring him back safely. Tell him that he still has a mother waiting for him at home. Auntie, young master isn't an impulsive person. Please don't worry. Nanny Jiang sighed inwardly and hurriedly tried to persuade her. Shi Fengming stared blankly and regretted his slip of the tongue. He hurriedly agreed and swore solemnly. After a long time, Wang finally calmed down and looked at Shi Fengming with teary eyes. Shi Fengming didn't dare to delay. He left Wang's place and returned to Xiao Garden. Zhou Jingyi had already prepared his luggage for him. He immediately took his luggage and hurriedly left. Shi Fengji rushed without stopping. When night fell, he arrived at White River Town. The Jean housekeeper was shocked to see him and hurriedly ordered people to tidy up the house and arrange accommodation. How is the situation? Is there any news of young mistress? Shi Fengji's expression was calm, but everyone could feel the turbulent emotions he was suppressing in his heart. This was the calm before the storm. The Jean housekeeper's expression froze. He didn't dare to lie to him, so he shook his head and truthfully said, "The old slave has sent people to search both sides of the river, as well as all the villages, docks and towns, but there's still no news?" Shi Fengji said, "This means that Wanyang should be fine, right?" The Jean housekeeper opened his mouth, but didn't dare to refute him. He could only nod and say, "Yes." Shi Fengji seemed to let out a sigh of relief and said, "That's good. That's good. No news is good news." At least he still had hope, right? The heavens still left him hope. Wanyang still left him hope. What he was most afraid of was coming here to see the cold corpse under the white cloth. If that happened, he would have nothing left. Continue to search, search carefully. Don't leave out even the slightest bit. If I find out that anyone dares to feign compliance, then don't blame me, Shi Fengji, for being ruthless. Whoever saves young mistress will be rewarded with 10,000 taels of silver. Quickly pass down the order. Shi Fengji said again. The Jean housekeeper trembled. He raised his eyes to look at him, but didn't dare to object. He could only bow and answer, "Yes, old slave will pass down the order." The Jean housekeeper sighed in his heart. Actually, after searching for so many days, if there was any news, there would have been news long ago. However, everyone knew that the young master and young mistress had a good relationship. Without the young master's orders, no one dared to leave. They could only continue with this useless search. The Jean housekeeper was originally thinking that when the young master received the news and rushed over, he would quickly report to him. From the looks of it, the young mistress was most likely buried under the water, and most likely not even her bones were left. Among the few servants who followed, the 2 male servants were lucky enough to be saved. Luya and the 2 daughters-in-law also survived. The old woman had passed away, but her corpse had been found. Only the young mistress. But no matter what, this was the truth. Although no one said it out loud, they had already determined it in their hearts. The Jean housekeeper planned to ask the young master to give the order, so that they could quickly do what needed to be done. It wouldn't be good to delay for too long. However, at this moment, when the Jean housekeeper saw Shi Fengji like this, the decision he had long made in his heart wavered. He didn't dare to say another word. He would obediently do whatever the young master said. Early the next morning, Zhuang Weixian brought Luya from the village where they were searching to see Shi Fengji. When Luya saw him, she called out "Young master," and knelt on the ground, crying sorrowfully. Zhuang Weixian wanted to console her, but it was inconvenient for him to do so. He could only pat Shi Fengji's shoulder and sigh softly to console him. When Shi Fengji saw Luya, his stomach ached even more. He sighed and said, "You and your master have a deep relationship. It's very good that you're here safe and sound. I'm sure your master will be happy to know. All right, don't cry. Get up." When Luya heard this, she couldn't stop crying. She sobbed and said, "Young master, it's all the servant's fault for being useless and not being able to protect young mistress. Young master, if you scold this servant or hit this servant's heart would also feel better." Shi Fengji said indifferently, "Wanyang has always treated you like a sister. She wouldn't like it if I scolded or hit you. Moreover, this matter isn't your fault. All right, don't cry. Tell me about the situation at that time. How did you search these past few days? What did you find?" When Luya heard this, She became even more upset. After crying for a while, she crawled up from the ground and told Shi Fengjiu about the situation at that time. When she talked about the search and rescue situation, she felt so guilty and anxious that she wanted to cry again. They searched back and forth, but there wasn't even a trace of young mistress. Shi Fengjiu believed in Luya. This was because he knew that while other people might have the intention to be perfunctory, Luya definitely wouldn't. Luya would only be as anxious as he was about Sangwon's safety. If even she said so, it could be seen that the current situation was really terrible. He still shook his head and insisted, "Wanyang will be fine. Your master will definitely be fine. Perhaps she was injured and was rescued by someone. Send people to all the medical centers and medicine shops to ask if anyone has come to buy medicine, calming soup, cold medicine, etc." "I've already sent people to ask," Zhuang Weixian hurriedly said. When he saw Shi Fengjiu staring at him with dissatisfaction, Zhuang Weixian quickly changed his words. "Of course, it's also possible that there were some omissions and carelessness. I'll send people to go again. Luya said to Shi Fengjiu with tears in her eyes, "Young master, you should rest for a while. Don't tire yourself out. Young mistress will be distressed if she sees you like this." Shi Fengjiu only felt suffocated from the pain in his heart. He wished that he could use his sword to stab a few holes in his chest to vent his feelings. He sighed and ignored Luya. After asking for the direction of the river, he rode his horse over. Luya wanted to follow him but was stopped by Zhuang Weixian. She glared at him and heard Zhuang Weixian say, "Just send 2 servants to follow us from afar." "What are you doing?" "Ai, Fengjiu is feeling terrible. Let him calm down," Luya said with a nasal voice. "Only you can say something so relaxed when you're so indifferent. Who knows how sad young master must be feeling right now? How can he calm down?" Zhuang Weixian couldn't help but feel wronged. "How am I relaxed? You heartless lass, I've been helping your people search every day, and you still say that about me. Forget it. If it weren't for the current situation, I'd definitely argue with you about it. What else can I do? Now that things have come to this, we can only do our best and leave the rest to fate. Ai, don't blame me for saying such harsh words. I'm just speaking the truth. From the looks of it, I'm afraid your young mistress is." "Afraid of what?" Luya glared at him with fire in her eyes. Zhuang Weixian felt a little scared when he saw that she was about to explode, but he didn't hesitate to say what he had to say. He braced himself and said, "I'm afraid she's met with misfortune." Chapter 304. "Shut up," Luya cried. "My young mistress will be fine, she'll be fine. You jinx, you're spouting nonsense." "Oh." It was one thing to think about it in one's heart, but it was another thing to hear it from someone else. Luya only felt that those words had cruelly tore apart her last bit of hope. Her heart turned cold and her legs went soft. Squatting on the ground, she covered her face and cried bitterly. "Ai, don't cry. Ai, don't cry, okay? Just take it that I said something wrong. Just take it that I didn't say anything." Zhuang Weixian was annoyed by her crying. He really had nothing better to do. He clearly knew that the truth wasn't pleasant to hear, but he still said it. First he was glared at by Shi Fengjiu, and now he made Luya sad. Not long after, Shi Fengming also arrived. When he arrived, he asked a few questions and couldn't help but sigh. When he heard that Shi Fengjiu had gone to the river, he hurriedly followed him. From afar, he saw Shi Fengjiu standing alone on the desolate riverbank, motionless. Behind him were Chang Huan and another servant. They didn't dare to move or make any noise. When they saw Shi Fengming, they hurriedly cupped their hands and bowed to greet him. Shi Fengming nodded and walked toward Shi Fengjiu. Hearing the footsteps, Shi Fengjiu slightly tilted his head. When he saw that it was Shi Fengming, he was startled. Then he turned back to stare at the still slightly muddy river and said indifferently, "Why are you here?" "Yesterday, not long after you left, I followed. Unfortunately, I wasn't as fast as you and arrived a night later than you. Big brother, you have to take care of yourself. Otherwise, sister-in-law will be distressed when she comes back." Shi Fengming came to his side and said. Shi Fengming quietly sized up Shi Fengjiu and couldn't help but feel shocked. Shi Fengju's face was extremely haggard. His eyes were sunken, his cheekbones were protruding, and his skin was dull. Shi Fengming had never seen that kind of gloomy, despairing, and regretful expression on Shi Fengju's face. He couldn't help but feel uncomfortable and said, "Big brother, why are you torturing yourself like this?" Shi Fengju shook his head and laughed at himself. "You don't understand. I'm the one who harmed Wan Yang. I didn't protect her well. If I had made my decision earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Wan Yang, she alas. Big brother." Shi Fengming forced a smile and said, "You're so good to sister-in-law. Why would you harm her? Sister-in-law won't blame you. Big brother, no matter what the result is, you have to calm down. You have to remember that you still have Big Aunt." Shi Fengju laughed mockingly and said, "The result? I don't dare to think about it. Second brother, I really don't dare to think about it. I never thought about what I would do without Wan Yang. Without me my mother might be sad for a while, but she still has another son, so she won't be sad for too long. But Wan Yang has nothing. She's too lonely. Big brother, you mustn't let your imagination run wild." Shi Fengming heard what he said, as if he wanted to follow Sangwan. He couldn't help but tremble in fear and said hurriedly, Don't be discouraged. It doesn't matter if we can't find her. Maybe sister-in-law has already been rescued by someone else. Maybe she's unconscious. No, maybe she's injured and can't move. Maybe she'll contact us after a while. You mustn't let your imagination run wild." Shi Fengju was staring at a small boat slowly passing by on the river in front of him. When he heard Shi Fengming's words, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. He abruptly turned around and stared at him. "What did you say? What did you just say?" Shi Fengming was shocked by him and stammered, I didn't say anything." "You said, maybe Wan Yang has already been rescued by someone else?" Shi Fengju said with a burning gaze. "So that's what he meant. It's good that you heard it." Shi Fengming's heart relaxed, and he nodded repeatedly. Yes. I think that sister-in-law must have been rescued by someone else. Otherwise, why can't we find her?" "Boat," Shi Fengju said happily. "We've all overlooked one thing. Wan Yang might have been rescued by a passing boat. If that boat happened to be a foreign boat that passed by here, it naturally wouldn't have any news of her if it searched here. Yes. That must be it. Wan Yang must have been rescued by a passing boat." Big brother's words make sense. Shi Fengming's spirit was also greatly lifted. He pulled his arm and shook it. "Big brother, let's go back quickly. I'll ask someone to check which boats passed by here after the accident. Maybe we'll have some news." "That's right." Shi Fengju laughed and couldn't wait to leave with him. Chang Huan and the others saw that the eldest young master was suddenly beaming with joy and in high spirits. They couldn't help but be stunned and stare blankly. It was Shi Fengming who unhappily shouted, "Why are you in a daze? Quickly bring the horse over." Only then did he wake up from his daze and hurriedly do as he was told. Back at the inn, Shi Fengju shared his analysis. Jin housekeeper Luya and Zhuang Weixian's eyes all lit up. They all agreed that it made sense. Old slave didn't think of this before. It's all thanks to the eldest young master. Don't worry, the old slave will arrange for people to investigate. I believe that there will be news soon. Jin housekeeper quickly said. Shi Fengju nodded. Investigate carefully. No matter how big or small, official or private, no matter where it goes, don't miss a single boat. Do you understand? Also, the search on both sides of the river can't be stopped. It must be done carefully. I know that everyone has worked hard. Everyone will be rewarded 50 taels of silver first. There will be more rewards when we return. There's only one thing, don't be lazy. If anyone tells on anyone who tried to cheat, don't blame me for being impolite. Yes, the old slave understands. Jin housekeeper quickly bowed and agreed. Seeing hope in the midst of despair, Shi Fengju was overwhelmed with excitement. He looked even more haggard and almost couldn't hold on any longer. Shi Fengming sighed and hurriedly advised him to return to his room to rest. Shi Fengju nodded and said, You should rest for a day too. Return to the household tomorrow. Sister-in-law is still pregnant, so it's not good for you to be out for too long. With the Jin housekeeper and me here, It'll be fine. Zhuang Weixian also said, yes, you should go back first. I'll stay behind to take care of things. Don't worry. Your sure family's business can't be without someone in charge. Fengju doesn't have the heart to be there now. If you don't take care of him, I'm afraid his heart will waver. Wouldn't it be troublesome if something were to happen? Sure Fengju hesitated. Sure Fengju forced a smile and persuaded him a few more times before he finally agreed. He nodded and said, since that's the case, young Master Zhuang, I'll leave my big brother in your hands. I'll return first tomorrow. If there's any news, don't forget to send a letter back. If there's anything at home, I'll send someone over to inform you. Sure Fengju nodded his head carelessly, but in his heart he thought, if there's anything at home, then let it be. I don't have the heart to care about it. I've always been considerate of others and consider the big picture. I've thought about this and that, always afraid that I'm not thorough enough. But in the end, I thought that everything was under my control. But even my Wanyang can't be protected in the capital. Under the careful care of the imperial physician and the servants, Sangwon's body finally recovered day by day and her complexion looked much better. And she missed Sure Fengju more and more. Standing on the Chui Lu, she would often stare blankly towards the south. Zhao Qi became more gentle and considerate towards her. Every time this happened, Sangwon felt an indescribable torment. She didn't like it at all. The better Zhao Qi treated her, the more she missed Sure Fengju. Perhaps as early as when he got into trouble in Handan, her heart had already been unable to part with him, but she deliberately didn't think about it and deliberately avoided this fact. But now, there was no way to avoid it. Only now did she know how important he was to her. He was definitely not just a partner to spend the rest of her days with. Absolutely not. She liked him, she admired him. Wanyang. In the afternoon, old Mistress Zhao brought Nanny Ding and 2 servant girls over. The servant girls were holding an exquisite rectangular box. Tomorrow, Princess Xinyang's residence will be hosting a poetry banquet. Accompany Qi. I've already prepared the clothes and jewelry for you. See if you like it and see if it fits. Old Mistress Zhao said with a smile and ordered the servant girls to open the box and present it to Sangwon. Sangwon's heart sank. What Princess Xinyang's residence hosting a banquet had nothing to do with her. Old Mistress Zhao wanted her to accompany Zhao Qi. Anyone with a discerning eye would know what this meant. Sangwon was suddenly put in a difficult position. She could sense old Mistress Zhao's temper. She knew that she couldn't step on her bottom line. Zhao Qi wouldn't do anything to her, but if old Mistress Zhao lost her patience, then things would be different. She didn't want to agree, but she also didn't dare to refuse. If she angered old Mistress Zhao, she was afraid that she would never be able to step out of this residence and see Sure Fengju again. What's wrong? Are you in some kind of trouble? If there's anything difficult, just tell me. Old Mistress Zhao smiled warmly and even took her hand. She said with a smile, we're not outsiders. Silly girl, what's so hard to say? She held her hand, and the cool feeling made her want to shiver slightly. Sangwon resisted the urge to pull her hand away. After a moment, she forced a smile and said, but I don't know any etiquette and rules. I'm afraid that I'll make a fool of myself. Not only will I make a fool of myself, but I'll also make the young Marquis lose face. Old Mistress Zhao covered her mouth and giggled. She tilted her head and said to old Mistress Ding with a smile, look at Wanyang, she's so sensible. How can I not feel sorry for such a child? I believe you. You're not that kind of person. It's good that you're like this. Besides, don't you have Qi? He'll take care of you. Wanyang Qi is sincere to you. As a mother and a widow, I really don't want anything in this life. I just want my son to have his wishes fulfilled and be safe. Wanyang, he hasn't attended a banquet in the capital for a long time. Just take it as helping me and accompany him. With his temper, if you don't go, he definitely won't go. I don't want him to wander around in the crowd and feel bad for me. Chapter 305. Since Madam has said so, Wanyang will go tomorrow. Sangwon smiled and happily nodded in agreement. This was the first time Sangwon agreed to something so happily. Madame Zhao was unable to restrain her joy. She clapped her hands and smiled. Good, good. I knew Wan Yang was a considerate and sensible person. That's right, quickly try on these clothes and jewelry. See if they fit. Sangwon was slightly hesitant, but soon after, she nodded with a smile and said, okay. She allowed Peony and the other two people to escort her into the inner bedroom to change her clothes and dress up. This was a set of red, bamboo, and plum blossom patterns made up of floral satin with wide sleeves. Gold and silver intertwined with auspicious herbs and clouds were inlaid with 2 cun wide edges. A red, golden silk embroidered with large hibiscus flowers was finely pleated skirt. It was matched with a palace sash and a bluebird jade pendant. The entire set of jewelry was made of red and blue jewels inlaid with patterns of rich and noble flowers. Flower ornaments, jade ornaments, hair covering, and heart picking were all available. It was exquisite and luxurious. When Sangwon finished changing and came out, Madame Zhao and Ding Mama's eyes lit up. Dressed like this, she was not the slightest bit different from the daughters of noble families in the capital. Her elegant and refined temperament was much better than many people. Wan Yang is truly a natural beauty. I have never seen such a beautiful and elegant girl. Madame Zhao clapped her hands and praised with a smile. She stepped forward and held Sangwon's hand. Sangwon's face slightly reddened. She lowered her eyes and said somewhat embarrassedly, Madam is overpraising. Ding Mama also smiled and said, Madam is not overpraising. Miss Wan, you deserve it. As she spoke, everyone laughed. Rest early tonight and recover your energy. Tomorrow morning, someone will come to help you dress up. Madame Zhao smiled as she left. Many thanks, Madam. Sangwon nodded in agreement. Madame Zhao left Chui Lu with Ding Mama with a smile and said, Look, which girl in this world can resist power and wealth? It's good that she likes it. As long as she is moved, I can rest assured. Madam is right. Nanny Ding bowed slightly and replied. In the evening, Zhao Qi also came. He said the same thing, but his tone was different from Madame Zhao's. He even smiled and said, I just think that you must be bored at home every day. It's good for you to go out and meet people. Of course, if you don't want to go, I won't go either. Don't worry, I will take care of you. Sangwon understood that old Mistress Zhao had not told Zhao Qi about it before she came. She did not mention old Mistress Zhao's words and nodded her head in agreement. Zhao Qi was delighted to hear that, and looked at her with gentleness. Who knew that in the middle of the night, Sangwon had a nightmare for some reason. She screamed and cried in her dream, which scared Yuanyang awake. It took a long time for her to rest again. The next day, he was in low spirits and there were dark circles around his eyes. As for going out for a banquet, there was no need to mention it. Needless to say, Zhao Qi was distressed to see her like this. Why didn't she report to him earlier after scolding Yuanyang? He hurriedly ordered someone to prepare a calming soup and comforted Sangwon to rest quietly. Sangwon said apologetically, It's all my fault. I've dampened young Marquis's mood. Don't say that. Zhao Qi did not want to hear a single word of her fault. He hurriedly persuaded. Your health is more important. There are many big and small banquets. There's no need to rush now. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. I'll take you there. Sangwon was even more worried when she heard this. She hesitated for a moment and said, Young Marquis, I wonder if you are free today? I want to go to the temple to burn incense. Can you accompany me? When Zhao Qi heard her take the initiative to invite him, he was so happy that he almost floated. He nodded and smiled. Good, good. Let's go now. Jade Buddha Temple's Bodhisattva is the most efficacious. The scenery nearby is also good. How about we go there? Sangwon did not know much about the capital, so she nodded and smiled. When Madame Zhao heard that Sangwon was frightened by a nightmare and could not go out, she was very unhappy. When she heard that she wanted Zhao Qi to accompany her to burn incense, she was satisfied again. She thought to herself, she is a heavenly beauty. Who doesn't love glory and wealth? I should have given her more beautiful clothes and jewelry. I'm afraid that things would not have been delayed until today. Sangwon had previously tried to evade the invitation. Madame Zhao was anxious and even promised to be the Marquis's legal wife. Now that she saw that Sangwon's attitude was gradually softening, she was no longer anxious. If she was moved and had a good relationship with her son, it would save her a lot of trouble. Naturally, the matter of the legal wife could also be avoided. Thus, he decided to turn a blind eye to it. Zhao Qi excitedly took Sangwon to the Jade Buddha temple to burn incense and sightsee. When they returned, it was already afternoon, and the sky was slightly dark. The carriage entered the city. Hearing the noise outside, Sangwon could not help but gently lift the curtain and look outside. The prosperity of the capital was indeed fascinating. How about I take Wanyang to walk around? Speaking of which, Wanyang has not been to any place in the capital for so long. Zhao Qi smiled. Sangwon smiled and said, "It's a little late today. Let's do it another day." Seeing that she agreed, Zhao Qi nodded with a smile. Wanyang. Zhao Qi suddenly held Sangwon's hand and said softly, "I'm really happy today." Really? Sangwon's body stiffened. She wanted to struggle, but Zhao Qi tightened his grip and refused to let go. A pair of narrow and bright eyes gazed at her affectionately. Sangwon no longer struggled. She lowered her head and remained silent. Zhao Qi's heart became even more soft. He was quite infatuated. He whispered, "Wanyang, Wanyang," twice. He stretched out his long arms and held her tightly in his arms. He leaned his head on her shoulder and said in a hoarse voice, "Wanyang, I like you so much. Wanyang, I'll be good to you. I'll only be good to you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me? Wanyang." Young Marquis. Sangwon's heart was cold. Her body could not help but tremble slightly. Except for her husband, Shi Fengju, who would be so frivolous. She did not know where the strength came from, but she suddenly broke free. She shrank back in a corner of the carriage and said in a trembling voice, "Young Marquis, please respect yourself." "Wanyang, I'm sorry. I was rude." Zhao Qi could not help but feel vexed. He suddenly stammered and spread his hands. "I'm sorry, Wanyang. I'm sorry. I scared you, didn't I? Don't be afraid. I won't do it again. Don't come over." Sangwon saw that he was about to come closer, and her heart jumped. "Don't be afraid. I won't go over. I won't go over." Zhao Qi was very regretful. He regretted not being able to control himself in a moment of impulse. He said softly, "Wanyang, I won't do it again. Don't be afraid. Wanyang, you know my feelings. It doesn't matter if you don't accept it now. I'll wait for you. I'll wait for you to accept me." Sangwon saw that he was still a gentleman, and secretly sighed in relief. She lowered her head for a while and said, I'm not a peerless beauty, nor am I outstanding. On the contrary, I'm a boring person. I really don't know what is worthy of young Marquis's attention." Zhao Qi was silent. How could he tell her the guilt and love he had for that person? He believed that God had sent her, who looked exactly the same, to him as a form of compensation, a chance that God had given him. How could he let it go? He had to make up for all the imperfections in the past. And these days, he could not tell whether he liked the shadow of the past or the living her in front of him. But he was sure that he would not let her go. He would work hard for the rest of his life. Even if she refused to marry him or be close to him for the rest of her life, it didn't matter. As long as he could accompany her, he would be satisfied. "No, Wanyang is very good. Wanyang is not boring at all. Wanyang, I'm sincere to you. You just need to know that." Zhao Qi said softly. He looked at her and smiled softly. "Wanyang, I can swear in front of Bodhisattva." "Young Marquis, you're too serious." Sangwon was startled and hurriedly avoided his unscrupulous and almost fanatical eyes. She hesitated for a while before saying, "I am a little confused." Zhao Qi saw that her attitude softened and his spirit was refreshed. He quickly said softly, "Don't be afraid, I won't be so reckless again." Sangwon lifted her eyes to look at him and nodded gently. The next day, Zhao Qi came to find her again, and wanted to take her to the street. Sangwon was secretly happy. After hesitating for a while, she nodded under Yuanyang's persuasion. When women shopped, they would go to jewelry shops, cosmetics shops, silk shops, antique shops, and bookstores for gold, silver, jade, and antiques. Then they would go to places like calligraphy and painting shops, music shops, and bookstores for the four treasures of the study. Zhao Qi taking her was no exception. When they came to the street that specialized in silk and brocades, Sangwon wanted to get out of the carriage and walk around. Zhaoqi naturally agreed. He took her hat and carefully put it on for her. Then he helped her get out of the carriage and walked with her all the way. The capital gathered all kinds of department stores in the world. No matter how precious something was, as long as it existed in the world, there was nothing that couldn't be bought in the capital. There were all kinds of fine satin, brocades, local specialties and brocades, including Persian grape brocades and Western fabrics. There was a dazzling array. Sangwon, Yuanyang, and the other maids who followed her were all stunned. Zhaoqi didn't have any concept of nobility. Every time he saw Sangwon stop to walk around, he would smile and order someone to buy it. However, Sangwon often persuaded him to stop, and only occasionally picked a few things. After they finished shopping, they went to a jewelry store and bought a lot of things. Zhaoqi then took her to the most famous restaurant in the capital, Dafulu, for a meal. After that, they drove around Hohai and took her back to the residence. When he sent Sangwon back to Chuilu, Zhaoqi saw that she was tired. He told Yuanyang and the others to take good care of her, and said goodbye to her. Sangwon nodded to see him off. You go down too. I want to lie down and rest. After sending Zhaoqi off, Sangwon said to Yuanyang, and asked her to take the 5-colored parrot downstairs to play. Yuanyang agreed and helped her into the room. She took off her clothes and lay down. She put down the curtain and touched the incense burner on the table. Then she gently closed the door and left. Looking at the light purple and gold embroidered canopy, Sangwon secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Her hands tightly grasped the edge of the brocade quilt. Chapter 306. She thought about it and decided that she could neither wait nor leave. She could only think of a way to send a message to Shi Fengjiu and hope that he would be able to rescue her from this prison as soon as he received her letter. Today, on Silk Street, she found a shop marked by the Shi family. While she was changing her clothes, she passed a letter to the shopkeeper. However, she did not dare say that the letter was for the young master. Instead, she said that she had an urgent matter for the Shi family's young mistress, and asked the shopkeeper to pass it on as soon as possible. The capital was the foot of the Son of Heaven. To be able to become a shopkeeper here, he must be an old and steady person who had been carefully selected. Sangwon believed that he would not act smart and not report her letter after receiving it. As long as the letter was delivered to the Shi family, as long as she was not so unlucky that it fell into Gu Fengzi's hands, she believed that her husband would definitely think of a way to save her. If he did not come, if he felt that he could not afford to offend the Marquis household, and abandoned her, Sangwon did not dare to think about it anymore. She shivered and suddenly felt a boundless fear and panic. After the letter was sent, Sangwon felt that the days were becoming more and more torturous. Every day was grinding away at her heart and soul, causing her to be exhausted. As for White River Town, Shi Fengjiu quickly obtained information on all the ships that passed through the area in the 2 days after the incident. He did not let a single ship go. According to the probability of it happening, he sent people to follow each ship and inquire about it. Jean housekeeper, you all continue to wait here. If there is any news, report back to me. I plan to personally make a trip to the capital. Shi Fengjiu said. The Jean housekeeper nodded. There were a total of 3 ships heading in the direction of the capital. It was reasonable for the young master to be worried and want to personally go. But, young master, the Jean housekeeper deliberated for a moment before saying, old slave feels that waiting here is useless. It is better to return to the Fu and wait. The old slave is not being lazy. He feels that if there is any news at the Fu, it will be easier to let the first madam and the others know and prevent everyone from worrying. No, Shi Fengjiu's lips curled into a cold smile as he stared at him and said, you will stay here and guard this place. Tell the others to report back to me if they have any news. Even if my mother sends someone to urge you to return, you can't leave even half a step. Do you understand? Go back. With Gu Fengzi in the household, he could not trust her. He didn't want his mother to get involved in this matter. It was his carelessness that caused his Yuanyang to suffer. He must find her personally. Jean housekeeper was stunned. Under Shi Fengju's burning gaze, he didn't dare to argue with him. He bowed and nodded. Yes, old slave will remember. The old slave will wait here and not go anywhere. Remember this. Shi Fengju nodded. The next day, Shi Fengju took a boat north to the capital. As soon as he left, Shi Fengming led his men down from their horses and called out, Big brother! Big brother! He ran towards the rear courtyard of the inn, giving the Jin housekeeper a fright. Second young master. Jin housekeeper's expression changed. Did something happen at home? Eldest young master just left to go to the capital. Go to the capital. Shi Fengming slapped his head and said, That's right. How did he know that sister-in-law is in the capital? Second young master. What did you say? Jin housekeeper stared at Shi Fengming with his eyes wide open. He originally wanted to explain the reason, but the words were stuck in his throat. Aya, look at me. Of course big brother doesn't know. However, he and sister-in-law really have a telepathic connection. They just happen to be right. Shi Fengming sighed with emotion. Second young master. Jin housekeeper was unable to make heads or tails of it. He smiled bitterly and said, Second young master, don't play riddles with the old slave. Just tell me what happened. You're trying to make the old slave anxious to death. Shi Fengming spread his hands and sighed. Big brother isn't here, so it's useless to tell him. I received an urgent letter from the capital. It was sent a few days ago. This letter was actually written to eldest sister-in-law. I thought, how could sister-in-law have any friends in the capital? If it was a letter from the Sang family's second young master, wouldn't it be better for him to go through the government's relay station rather than our shop? Besides, even if he wanted to send a letter to us, he shouldn't have gone to the silk shop. He should have gone to the shipping company. I showed the letter to my wife, and she said that the handwriting was sister-in-law's. I think that sister-in-law must be in the capital, and might have met with some trouble. Shi Fengming's string of words stunned the Jin housekeeper. His eyes gradually lit up and he said happily, That's great. That's great. Second young master, you're right. This letter is most likely from young mistress. It seems that eldest young master's guess was right. Young mistress really was rescued by a passing ship. Good, that's really good. Second young master, there's no time to lose. Old slave will go and chase after eldest young master. Shi Fengming nodded. Quickly make arrangements. I'll go with you. Before he came, his wife had repeatedly urged him to personally hand this letter to his big brother. Shi Fengming knew that this matter was of great importance, and was unwilling to hand it over to anyone else. Jin housekeeper hurriedly agreed and immediately ordered the servants to make arrangements. After a moment of excitement, he suddenly asked Shi Fengming, Did eldest madam ask second young master to come? No. Shi Fengming shook his head and secretly cursed himself. When he received the letter, he was filled with curiosity and surprise. He never thought that eldest aunt would take the letter and discuss it with Zhou Jingyi. After Zhou Jingyi was certain that the handwriting was Sangwan's, she hurriedly urged him to quickly come and report to his big brother. The next day, when the sun rose, he immediately went out. When he heard the Jin housekeeper mention it, he suddenly realized that he had forgotten to tell eldest aunt. This was also a coincidence. If Shi Fengju knew about it, he would definitely say that he was lucky. If Shi Fengming told Wang, it was unknown whether Sangwan was dead or alive. Wang would definitely keep her letter and read it. She was illiterate and Gu Fengzi was by her side every day. Naturally, the contents of this letter would be seen by Gu Fengzi first. Even without thinking, Shi Fengju knew that Gu Fengzi would definitely not tell the truth about the contents of the letter. I was afraid that eldest brother would be anxious, so I took the letter and rushed over here. I didn't have time to tell eldest aunt. Shi Fengming was somewhat vexed and said, There's no rush. We'll tell her when we get back. It's more important for us to quickly catch up with eldest brother. You're right. Jin housekeeper nodded. Even though the airship was flying, it still took half a day to catch up with Shi Fengju because Shi Fengju's airship was not much slower than theirs. When he saw Shi Fengming, Shi Fengju was also shocked. He instinctively thought that his mother had asked him to invite him back. He had made up his mind not to go back, so he waited calmly for him to speak. Unexpectedly, after hearing Shi Fengming's words, Shi Fengju was completely stunned. He snatched the letter and opened it while complaining. You're also someone who doesn't know what's important and what's urgent. Since you had a letter, why didn't you take it out earlier? Why did you have to talk so much nonsense? Shi Fengming felt wronged. Didn't he just want to show off a little? Not only did he not get a word of praise, he even got scolded. Shi Fengju's hands trembled as he opened the letter. When he held the thin letter in his hand, he was so nervous that his heart almost jumped out of his throat. He held his breath and trembled as he opened the letter. In that instant, his heart stopped beating and his mind went blank. That's right. That's right. It's Wan Yang. It's Wan Yang's handwriting. It's Wan Yang's letter. Shi Fengju's face gradually broke into a smile. His deep eyes were gradually filled with light, like the morning sun that broke through the darkness. It was so bright that it was dazzling. It's Wan Yang. It's Wan Yang. Wan Yang didn't die. She's in the capital. Shi Fengju only felt that his chest was filled with excitement. It was so full that it was about to burst open. He hurriedly walked around the cabin, as if this was the only way to vent the excitement in his heart. Really? Shi Fengming and the Jean housekeeper looked at each other, and couldn't help but smile. That's great, big brother. When big brother goes to the capital, you can bring sister-in-law back for a reunion. Congratulations, big brother. Sister-in-law is blessed by the heavens. Misfortune really turns into good fortune. That's right, that's right. Congratulations, eldest young master. The Jean housekeeper also said with a smile. He heaved a huge sigh of relief in his heart. These days, everyone had been living in a gloomy and oppressive atmosphere. That tense atmosphere seemed to blow up at any moment. No one dared to speak loudly, much less laugh. Even their breathing was done cautiously. This time, it was finally good. Shi Fengju smiled bitterly and shook his head with a sigh. Wan Yang is in trouble. I'm afraid it won't be that easy. That's nothing. Shi Fengming said disapprovingly. With Big Brother's ability and our Shi family's strength, there's no need to worry about this. When Big Brother goes to the capital, it'll be a piece of cake. The Jean housekeeper was more cautious than Shi Fengming. He hurriedly asked, Eldest young master, is there another secret? If it could make Shi Fengju frown, it definitely wasn't a small matter. Moreover, if everything went smoothly, Sangwon wouldn't have to go through so much trouble to write a letter. She would have returned long ago. Shi Fengju handed the letter to Shi Fengming and said lightly, Take a look. Just remember, this matter must be kept a secret. You're not allowed to tell anyone, including my mother. Shi Fengming and the Jean housekeeper's hearts trembled. They looked at each other and read the letter together. Unconsciously, their expressions changed greatly. Although Sangwon's words were tactful, it wasn't difficult to understand what she meant. I'll go to the capital first. No matter what, I have to rescue Wan Yang safely. After confirming that his wife was safe, Shi Fengju's heart calmed down, and he regained his composure in the blink of an eye. He said slowly, Fengming, go back as usual. Jean housekeeper, stay here and wait for Wan Yang and I to return to the residence before you go back. Luya, that lass, is a loyal person. You can pass on this news to her. As for the others, there's no need. Shi Fengming raised his eyes and said, Jingyi also misses sister-in-law very much. Big brother, can I tell her? This brat. Shi Fengju looked at him helplessly and nodded. Sure, sister-in-law isn't the kind of person who likes to spread rumors. All right, then I understand. Shi Fengming smiled and nodded. After the discussion was settled, Shi Fengju parted ways with Shi Fengming and the Jean housekeeper, and continued on to the capital. Standing at the bow of the boat, the wind brought by the boat whistled in her face. Her fine black hair danced in the wind and her clothes fluttered. It was already late autumn. The end of October was approaching November. The wind blowing from the river not only carried a thick layer of water vapor, it also carried a layer of chill. It blew past her face and poured into her collar. It was extremely cold. Chapter 307. Shi Fengju remained motionless, his eyes unblinking as he stared straight ahead. In his heart, there was a ball of fire, a ball of fire that was so hot that it wanted to burn him up. After so many days of suspense, every day was a torment. Finally, he could completely let go of it. No matter who the other party was, no matter how difficult it was, he would not abandon his Wan Yang. He would definitely save her. He was her wife, and always will be. When Shi Fengju reached the capital, he immediately called for someone to inquire about the Wu Wei manor. Very quickly he found out everything, including the matter of the young marquis falling out with his mother, Madame Zhao. Shi Fengju was slightly surprised, wondering why the young marquis liked Fei, or so much that for her death, he did not hesitate to abandon himself and exile himself to live in the West Mountain residence. He lived there for nearly 5 years, and in these 5 years he was not even willing to see Madame Zhao's face once. For such a person who was deeply in love, why would he continue to pester his Wan Yang in such a short period of time? And for his Wan Yang, he even returned to the marquis household in the capital. This matter was too strange. Go and find out if there is a portrait of this Fei or if there is anyone who has seen her before, can draw a portrait of her. Shi Fengju instructed. Yes, eldest young master. The head shopkeeper in charge of the Shi family's business in the capital bowed and agreed. He could not help but say, after all, this is an old matter from many years ago, and that Miss Fei is from the Wu Wei manor. If we want a portrait of her or find someone who has seen her before, we can only inquire from the marquis household. This will take a lot of time. Eldest young master, you have always had a good relationship with Duke Jin and his wife. Why don't you ask them? After all, they are all in the same circle, who knows? You're right. Shi Fengju slapped his forehead and laughed. No wonder I feel like I have forgotten something, but I can't remember it at the moment. You reminded me. Since that's the case, don't ask around. It would be bad if you startled someone. I'll go ask Prince Jinan first. Prince Jinan and his wife, Zhou Lian and Yu Qingxi, were about the same age as Shi Fengju. They had known each other for many years, and had a very good relationship. Zhou Lian's father had already passed away, and he was the current emperor's younger brother. He was immersed in calligraphy, painting and antiques, and didn't ask about court politics. He was a wealthy and incomparably idle member of the imperial family. He was deeply doted on by the current emperor. On New Year's and other festivals, all kinds of rare treasures, precious paintings, and foreign and western treasures were sent to Jin and Wang Fu like flowing water. 6 years ago, when he passed away, the current emperor wept bitterly in front of the court, saying, "This emperor has made a mistake." He personally went to the prince's mansion to offer his condolences. He ordered all civil and military officials to attend the funeral and to suspend court for 3 days. Zhou Lian inherited his father Wang's title of nobility. According to the custom and etiquette, he should be demoted 1 level to Qingxi. But the current emperor pitied his parents' death. He originally wanted to issue an imperial edict to not demote the Qingxi Wang title. However, Zhou Lian insisted on refusing, stating that his imperial father had left behind an order not to break the rules of the imperial family. Seeing his insistence, the current emperor could only sigh and drop the matter. But in his heart, he pitied him even more and bestowed him with the title of Junwang. He also rewarded him with the salary of a Wang. This time, Zhou Lian didn't refuse and accepted the gratitude. In these years, Zhou Lian was like his father, a wealthy and leisurely member of the imperial family. Even the Wang Fei he married was Yu Qingxi, who was born a commoner. She usually liked to dress as a commoner and wander around the capital, making friends with all kinds of people. By chance, he met Shi Fengju and regretted not having met earlier. They quickly became bosom buddies. Every time Shi Fengju went to the capital, he would definitely pay a visit to him and his wife. The next day, Shi Fengju went to Jin and Junwang Fu. When Zhou Lian and Yu Qingxi saw that he had come, they were pleasantly surprised and hurriedly ordered people to prepare a banquet. "I didn't expect that you would come to the capital so late. Hee. Could it be that you plan to spend New Year's in the capital this year?" Zhou Lian asked with a smile. Yu Qingxi smiled and said, "That's also good. Why don't you stay in our Fu with us? The more the merrier." Shi Fengju smiled bitterly and said, "I've met with some trouble. If I can't solve it, I'm afraid that I'll have to stay in the capital until New Year's." When Zhou Lian heard him say that, he roughly understood why he had come and hurriedly said, "What kind of trouble is it? If I can help you, I'll definitely do my best." In any case, as long as he didn't form cliques for personal gain or steal power, even if he was unreasonable and caused trouble, Imperial Uncle would turn a blind eye and not discipline him. Yu Qingxi looked at Shi Fengju for a while and said in surprise, "Your Highness, look, why does Fengju's complexion look so bad? He's lost a lot of weight." When Zhou Lian heard his wife's words, he squinted his eyes and tilted his head to look at Shi Fengju. After a while he clapped his hands and exclaimed, "That's right. I was just saying when you came in, I felt that something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. What's wrong with Fengju? What exactly happened to make you look like this?" "Your Highness, Princess Consort. It's a long story." Shi Fengju smiled bitterly. Zhou Lian was tactful and said, "Let's go to the study room to talk. Let's go." Shi Fengju had the same intention, and went to the study room with the couple. After listening to Shi Fengju briefly explain the matter, Zhou Lian and Yu Qingxi looked at each other. "I didn't think that there would be such a thing." Yu Qingxi sighed and said, "When I went to the banquets and other residences, I heard that the young Marquis of Wuwei Manor had returned and brought back a young lady that he treasured very much. I didn't expect." Xiaoxi. When Zhou Lian heard her say treasured very much, he was afraid that he would agitate Shi Fengju and hurriedly gave a signal with his eyes. Yu Qingxi regretted her slip of the tongue, and her face turned slightly red. She quickly smiled and said, "Fengju, don't take it to heart, I was just speaking nonsense." Shi Fengju's heart tightened. It wasn't because he took it to heart, but because he was worried. He said, "What Princess Consort said is the same as what I heard. Why would I take it to heart? Wan Yang must have put in a lot of effort to send me the letter. Just thinking about her in that residence makes my heart uneasy." Yu Qingxi sighed and said, "Don't worry, Wan Yang must be an intelligent woman. Since she was able to send you a letter, it means that she's doing well. We'll just have to think of a way." Shi Fengju could only nod his head and thought to himself, "I wonder how anxious she must be right now. My life isn't easy, but as a weak woman, I'm afraid it'll be even harder for her. That young Marquis is so. For her to deal with him, it'll be even more exhausting. Presumably, after the letter was sent out, she must be looking forward to me day and night, right? No matter what, I have to send her a letter to make her feel at ease." "That's right," Shi Fengju suddenly said. "I heard that young Marquis Zhao had a beloved concubine called Fei. I don't know." When Shi Fengju said this, Zhou Lian and Yu Qingxi finally remembered and felt that it was a little strange. That's true. Young Marquis Zhao really liked Fei. Madame Zhao urged him to get married, but he refused and insisted on taking Fei as his wife. Fei was born a dancer, but she was of a lowly background. Think about it, how could Madame Zhao agree? Later she took advantage of young Marquis Zhao's absence and killed Fei. Because of this, the mother and son had a very bad relationship. All these years, young Marquis Zhao was still unwilling to forgive Madame Zhao. I heard that he moved to a manor outside the city, and didn't have any other women by his side. How could he have feelings for Wan Yang? This matter is really strange. Shi Fengju became even more worried when he heard this. He said, "So I want to ask Princess Consort, did Princess Consort ever see Fei? Do you have a portrait of her?" Yu Qingxi clapped her hands and said with a smile, "Of course I did. Young Marquis Zhao simply treated her as his wife and brought her with him when he went out as a guest. His Highness has seen it before. His Highness' painting skills have reached perfection. That's simple. Just let His Highness draw one." "That's great." Shi Fengju was overjoyed. Zhou Lian smiled and said, "That's fine. But after so many years, I'm afraid that my memory isn't very good. I don't know if it's similar." Zhou Lian glanced at his princess consort as he said this. In fact, it wasn't that his memory wasn't good and he couldn't draw it. It was just that if he didn't say this, his princess consort would definitely be jealous. She would say that he had such a deep impression of a woman he met for so many years and so on. Although his princess consort was born a commoner, he had suffered a lot in order to pursue her. The smell of jealousy was definitely strong enough to spread 10 miles away. Yu Qingxi pushed him and said with a smile, "Just try to draw it. Don't you still have me? I naturally know if it's similar or not. When the time comes, I'll just ask you to change it." She then sighed and said, "That Miss Fei, can be considered a beauty with a short life. She's very beautiful and gentle. Her temperament is also very good." Zhou Lian smiled and glanced at Shi Fengjiu and his princess consort. "Then I'll try." Zhou Lian took out the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone and began to draw. Yu Qingxi stood beside him and gave him pointers, occasionally saying a few words. Shi Fengjiu couldn't help but feel nervous. With his hands behind his back, he stared at a landscape painting on the wall, lost in thought. "Yes, that's it. It's not bad at all." Yu Qingxi suddenly laughed lightly and beckoned Shi Fengjiu to come forward and take a look. Shi Fengjiu hurried over and took a look. His expression immediately changed as he stared blankly at the woman in the painting. This painting was drawn with light ink and wasn't colored. However, those delicate and pretty features were clearly his Wanyang. It was just that the woman in the painting was more charming. Her charming eyes were like silk, and the corners of her mouth were curved in a smile. His Wanyang was even more elegant and refined. Her eyes were also clearer and more penetrating. Shi Fengjiu's heart turned cold. As he had expected, he finally understood why that young Marquis Zhao wouldn't let go of Wanyang. "What is it? Is there something wrong?" Yu Qingxi couldn't help but ask when she saw him staring fixedly at the woman in the painting, his expression constantly changing. Shi Fengjiu grimaced and said, "No wonder that young Marquis Zhao would suddenly change his attitude. This Fei's appearance is too similar to Wanyang's." "There's such a thing." Yu Qingxi and Zhou Lian were also shocked. "I'm very worried about Wanyang." Shi Fengjiu looked at the couple and said sincerely, "Wang Yi and princess consort, do you have a way to send a message to Wanyang for me? I have to tell her that I'm here and have her wait patiently for me. I'm worried that she won't be able to endure it." Chapter 308. Fengjiu. Sangwon became anxious and hugged him tightly. "Then when will you take me away?" "Fengjiu, I'm afraid I can't hold on any longer." "Don't cry, Wanyang, don't cry." Shi Fengjiu hugged her and patted her gently. After thinking for a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Wanyang, I don't want to wait any longer. 3 days later, try to get Zhao Qi to take you out. At noon, go to Dafuhuan. I'll wait for you there, and we'll leave then. If anything happens on that day, we won't be able to contact each other in time. You'll go the next day. Do you understand?" If he were to wait any longer, not to mention Sangwon, how could he let go of his own heart? He had seen clearly how Zhao Qi treated Sangwon when he was hiding in the dark. He couldn't wait to beat him up. This was his woman, and she could only be his for the rest of her life. No one else could touch her. Sangwon smiled through her tears and nodded repeatedly. "I understand. 3 days later, at Dafuhuan. Fengjiu, wait for me." "I will." "Wanyang, go out quickly. Take care. Soon, we'll be reunited." Shi Fengjiu held her hand and was reluctant to part with her. "Wanyang, luckily you're smart and didn't tell old Mistress Zhao's true identity. Otherwise, it would have been more troublesome. Clearly, this is heaven's will. You will definitely return to my side." Shi Fengjiu held her hands tightly and said. Sangwon smiled gently and said, "I don't know why, but when I saw old Mistress Zhao, the way she stared at me made me feel scared and cold. I didn't dare to say anything. After that, she didn't seem to ask me again, and the matter was left vague." Shi Fengjiu smiled and nodded. He held her hand and kissed it before saying reluctantly, "Go out quickly. Wanyang, remember, don't give yourself away. The girl beside you is quite shrewd." "I will." Sangwon nodded. Her eyes were fixed on Shi Fengjiu's face, unwilling to move away. Shi Fengjiu was also reluctant to part with her, but he knew that he couldn't delay any longer. He gritted his teeth and let her go. "Wanyang, go now." Sangwon bit her lip, turned around abruptly, and walked out step by step. Shi Fengjiu stared at her back in a daze. She was delicate and graceful, and her footsteps were graceful like willows swaying in the wind. Her head was slightly lowered, revealing a slender and white neck, which made people want to hold her in their arms and cherish her. She was his wife, but at this moment, he had no choice but to watch her leave. Sangwon couldn't help but stop and turn around. Shi Fengjiu had already disappeared, and all she could see was a room full of exquisite porcelain, gold, and jade furnishings, as well as gorgeous layers of brocade canopy. It was as if the hug and intimacy just now were just a dream. Sangwon couldn't help but feel disappointed and lost. She took a deep breath, calmed herself down, and walked out calmly. "Miss, are you all right?" The timing was just right. Yuan Yang must have been entangled by someone or had an accident, so she rushed over at this time. "I'm all right. Let's go out." Sangwon smiled slightly. "Miss, your makeup seems to be a bit smudged." Yuan Yang looked at her face and said. Sangwon was surprised and secretly thought that this girl's eyes were very sharp. She smiled and said, "I just wiped my face. I felt that it was fine, so I was too lazy to touch up my makeup. It's not good to trouble others. Let's go." "It's okay." Yuan Yang smiled and said, "Miss, you're born beautiful. Even if you don't touch up your makeup, you'll still look good. You have a sweet mouth." Sangwon smiled. The two looked at each other and smiled, then went out together. When they returned that day, Sangwon was still the same as usual. Zhao saw that she was willing to accompany him to the banquet, so it was obvious that she had accepted him in her heart. He was overjoyed and accompanied her for a while before leaving. After Madame Zhao heard this, she was also happy. She asked Yuan Yang in detail, and found out that Sangwon changed her clothes halfway. She had some doubts in her heart, and asked a few questions. Yuan Yang hurriedly smiled and answered, saying that she saw it with her own eyes. The girl didn't deliberately slip up, but was knocked down by a lady passing by. Madame Zhao nodded and didn't continue to argue. Sangwon eagerly looked forward to 3 days later. Every day felt like a year, and it was even more difficult to endure than before. It wasn't easy to reach this day. She only needed to mention a little, and Zhao agreed. The two left the food together. The waiter of Dafu politely led them to a private room on the 3rd floor. The waiter who came in to pour tea waved his palm at Sangwon, then politely left after pouring tea. Sangwon's heart was beating very fast, and her legs felt a little weak and trembling slightly. Zhao was talking to her with a smile. Seeing her like this, he couldn't help but be startled and asked, "Wan Yang, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? If you're not feeling well, let's go back. Whenever you want to come back, we can come again." No need. I'm fine." Sangwon secretly took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. She stammered. I. Zhao became more and more concerned. "Wan Yang." Sangwon's face turned red and white. She was so weak that she didn't know what to say. Her mind was also blank. She was so anxious that she secretly scolded herself for being useless. How could something like this happen at such a critical moment? Yuan Yang was also very puzzled, but a light flashed in her mind and she suddenly smiled. "Miss, are you feeling unwell and want to wash your hands?" Sangwon's face turned red and she quickly nodded. Zhao found it funny. Seeing her so shy, he felt that she was even more pitiful and cute. He smiled softly and said, "Yuan Yang, quickly take Wan Yang away." She had always been thin-skinned. It turned out that she wanted to go to the toilet. No wonder she couldn't speak clearly. But in front of him, why did she have to be so careful? No matter what she did, he wouldn't say no. "Miss, please." Yuan Yang pursed her lips and smiled as she bowed. Sangwon felt relieved and nodded her head. And she followed Yuan Yang out. After asking for the place, they walked together. At the corner, Yuan Yang's neck went numb. Before she could react, she closed her eyes and her body fell to the ground. Sangwon was shocked, but she was pulled to the side and her mouth was covered. "Wan Yang, it's me. Fengjiu." Sangwon was overjoyed. Her eyes sparkled as she looked up at him. She threw herself into his arms and hugged him tightly. Her legs were weak. Shi Fengjiu also hugged her tightly. "Wan Yang, it's okay now. I'll take you away now." And Sangwon nodded. She wanted to lift her leg, but her legs were weak. Shi Fengjiu carried her by the waist and quickly went downstairs from the other side. In the courtyard downstairs, there was already a carriage waiting for them. The two got on the carriage. The coachman waved his whip and the carriage slowly moved out. Leave the city immediately. Go to the village in the eastern suburbs of Wamping County, Shi Fengju ordered. Yes, young master, the coachman answered. He cracked the whip continuously and the carriage began to move. Sangwon. Shi Fengju held her face in his hands and looked at her in a daze. His lips were brimming with a brilliant smile. Fengju, we're okay now, right? Sangwon felt as if she was in a dream. She was a little dazed. We're out now. We're free now. The plan that she had painstakingly thought about for a long time finally became a reality? Of course. From now on, we'll never be separated again. Shi Fengju smiled and kissed her lips fiercely. Sangwon snorted and hugged him tightly. She responded passionately to him, as if she was unwilling to let go even if the world dried up and the sea dried up. Shi Fengju was startled by her passion, but he responded even more passionately. He hugged her and kissed her until he was almost suffocating. Only then did he reluctantly let go of her. Wanyang, Shi Fengju panted. He lowered his head and pressed it against her forehead. He said in a hoarse voice, "Don't tempt me like this. We're in a carriage. Do you know how much I missed you?" Sangwon was limp in his arms. When she heard his words, her blushing face became even more radiant. She stared at him with her watery eyes. "Fengju, I missed you too. You woman, you finally know how good I am." Shi Fengju hugged her tightly. He lifted her up with both hands and placed her on his lap. He lowered his head and kissed her face, eyebrows and forehead. It was as if this was the only way to confirm that she was truly back by his side. Sangwon snuggled up to him gently. She seemed to be enjoying and greedy for his affection. She said softly, "Fengju, husband, I've always known that you're very, very good." Wanyang. Shi Fengju raised his hand and gently caressed her face. Again and again his dark eyes gently shrouded her. He looked at her with a gaze full of longing. He did not want to think about how difficult it was to live in fear and worry. He only knew that she was back by his side, and that she would be loved by him. His heart was slightly warm. He smiled and helped her tidy up her clothes. He exhaled and said, "Wanyang, I'm really happy." Sangwon smiled gently. "Me too." He smiled and looked at her carefully. Their eyes met and conveyed a strong tenderness. Their eyes were glued together, as if they could never be separated again. Shi Fengju let out a sigh of satisfaction and hugged her into his embrace. He patted her shoulder and his heart felt more at ease. "Fengju, will Dafu be all right?" Sangwon suddenly asked nervously. "Don't worry, I've already made arrangements. There won't be any leaks. At most, Zhaoqi will think that you're being held hostage," Shi Fengju said. "And?" Sangwon nodded gently. Shi Fengju's heart felt sour for no reason, and he could not help but say sourly, "I thought my Sangwon would ask Zhaoqi. Fortunately, he was polite to you and did not take advantage of you. Otherwise, I wouldn't care if he's a duke or not. I, Shi Fengju, would not be able to take it lying down." Hearing him mention Zhaoqi, Sangwon's body stiffened and she whispered, "He didn't do anything to me, really. Fengju, don't mention him in the future, okay? I didn't do anything wrong to you. Of course I believe you." Shi Fengju gently held her face and smiled. "How can I not know what kind of woman my Wanyang is? If you don't want to mention it, then we won't talk about it in the future." Sangwon's heart relaxed. She raised her eyes to look at him with a smile and gentle affection in her eyes. Ever since they met 3 days ago, when he vowed to save her, she began to feel uneasy. It was not because of anything else, but because of this problem. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.